Ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to start the RE User Summit 2020. Thank you very much for attending this meeting despite your very busy schedules. My name is Masaya Ishida, Senior Manager of the Renewable Energy Institute. First of all, upon the opening, I'd like to ask Mr. Teruyuki Ono, Executive Director of the Renewable Energy Institute, for the welcome remarks, please.
Thank you for the introduction. Ono from REI. Thank you very much for this big attendance. Please allow me to welcome you all. This is January 31, just 1 month of this new year. The year 2020, this is a very memorable year. July and August, as you are aware, there will be the Tokyo Olympics and the Paralympics. From April, there will be the legal unbundling of the generation and the transmission. However, what I would like to emphasize about 2020 is that this is the year that Paris Agreement starts implementation. Under the Paris Agreement, which was agreed in 2015, in order to keep the temperature rise well below 2 degrees. That is the agreement under the Paris Accord. However, depending on the NDC submitted by each of the countries, still under the scenario, the forecast is that the temperature will rise at 3 to 4 degrees. Already at this moment from Industrial Revolution, 1 degree rise has been observed. Just with 1 degree rise, there are lots of impact and extreme weathers of climate change in Australia since last autumn. Because of the wildfire, the area as large as half of Japan has already burnt. As the climate crisis advances, each of the countries are trying to realize the emission zero by 2050. This is very important, but what IPCC is demanding is that not only large reduction of emission by 2050, but there must be a half reduction by 2030 according to IPCC, which is a very ambitious target. Within 10 years, if we try to reduce the emission by 50%, it means a 7% reduction year on year. However, across the world, there are some jurisdictions across the world who do not agree with this goal. In the case of EU, it was during COP25 that they announced the so-called Green New Deal. According to this, by 2030, EU's goal of 40% reduction, they said, will be raised to 50 to 55% of the reduction. On the other hand, in the case of Japan's NDC is minus 26%. According to the COP21 decisions, each of the countries are required to make an even ambitious goal to be submitted by COP26, which will be organized in Glasgow, England, in November of this year. COP26 that will start on the 9th of November, and because of the COP21 decision, the submission is 9 months prior to, which means it is 9th of February next month. Within the government of Japan, inside the government of Japan, February 9, they are saying that they will simply submit by the deadline, but that the reduction goal would not be changed. That is the direction of the government of Japan. I have heard that there are still some discussion ongoing within the government, but what is important is not providing it before the deadline if there is no change in the goal. That is meaningless, but that is what the government of Japan is doing. The largest reason why Japan's goal is less ambitious is because of the less ambitious goal of the overall energy plan. As you know, by 2030, the renewable is to be 22 to 24% in terms of the energy mix, which is a very low ambition. And coal thermal, it is still 26%. Energy mix 26% is planned to be provided by coal thermal, according to the current plan. At the end of December last year, the renewable energy power supply for the last year, it was about 18%. So last year, for 1 year, 18% of the electricity was renewable in Japan. And it's 22 to 24% by 2030. So virtually, we will definitely reach this goal. And the solar is expanding even now. Offshore wind, large-scale offshore wind projects are already increasing, and therefore 30% of renewable by 2030 is almost certain. However, this 30%, it is larger than the current government goal, but still that is not sufficient. As I mentioned, in order to avoid this climate crisis, what the responsibility, what role Japan has to play is, the goal should be at least beyond 40% of renewable by 2030. In order to realize that, the policies of the government of Japan and the management of the utilities all have to be changed significantly. Today, together with REI and with CDP Japan, WWF Japan, and together with the 20 companies of major companies, we have compiled a recommendation, 3 strategies and 9 policies that companies demand to deal with climate change, which will be introduced during the symposium, which is very important. In the company's activities, we know their effort, and they have compiled their recommendations based on their efforts in the field. I mentioned about the Green New Deal announced by EU. And according to the Bloomberg in the article, a comment of the top leader of the European Commission was cited that Green New Deal, of course, is measures against climate, but they mentioned that it is a strategy to avoid Japanification. Japanification means going like Japan, that EU economy should not suffer from a prolonged low growth or stagnation. That was a comment cited. Well, quite unfortunate that Japan's name would be used in that way. But in order to decarbonize, efficiency must be improved, low growth has to be avoided. Japan has to play a positive contribution to avoid the climate crisis, and that is what Japan's role must be. I would like to conclude my brief remarks by hoping that today's summit will be the start point of a huge contribution to energy transition of Japan. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Before going into the presentations, the RE users' activities will be introduced to you. Now, these are the activities that we are engaged in. In terms of events, we have information exchange. The major energy users will come together 3 times a year to discuss. We have held 6 meetings so far. Next is the summit. This is the second summit we are holding today. And also, there is information exchange on a regional basis that we have started from October of 2019. In Osaka, we held the first meeting, and after that, Fukuoka, Iyama City, as well as Sendai City of Miyagi prefectures are where we have held this event. In February, Kagoshima, Yamagata, and also in Nagoya, we are scheduled to have these events held. In terms of communication information, on a monthly basis, we are distributing newsletters. Case studies or the state-of-the-art applications are also provided as information on our web. We are also involved in policy recommendations as well. We have been conducting the challenges consideration working groups, and 20 companies are getting together. We have started this meeting from April of 2019. We have discussing what kind of challenges are hindering the adoption, and the solutions are being discussed. And today we are going to be announcing the proposal that has been formulated. Now let me show you some photographs. This is the information exchange. We are holding this 3 times a year. This is a summit meeting. For last year, we had a turnout of 400 people. We also have a similar turnout for today's summit meeting. This is a regional cooperation project. This is a meeting we had in Osaka in October of last year. newsletter is not being shown, but the renewable energies companies' experience as well as market trends are introduced in our newsletter. Case studies. We have a PDF that can be downloaded from our website for specific case studies. This is the challenges, the consortium working group. We have come up with a press release today. In the panel discussion, we have today the corporate representatives, the government representatives will engage in a panel discussion based on this proposal. I hope you will enjoy the program until the very end. Now, for the power that is used for the summit meeting, we are using 100% renewable energy, which is a non-fossil fuel certificate is obtained for this. Now we'd like to proceed to the program. The first section will deal with the global trends. We'll be hearing from representative of US, Europe, and Asia. The first speaker is EVA, Mr. Marco Porter, Director of Supply Chain and International Collaboration of REVA. REVA has a membership of 200 companies in the United States, facilitating the use of renewable energy. The promotion is conducted by this organization. Mark, please.
Arigato, Ishida-san. Konnichiwa. Good afternoon. So, my name is Mark Porter, and I am a director at the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance based in the US. I'd like today to speak to everyone and help answer a few questions that might be on everyone's mind. Firstly, what is going on in the US? Well, many things are going on in the US, but what is going on specifically with corporate renewable energy procurement in the US? Why is this happening? Which of the companies have been buying? What technologies are they using? And then lastly, I'd like to provide some thoughts as to where we and I think this market might move over the next few years. So let's begin. 2019 was a record year. This chart is based on transactions that were announced by companies doing deals in the US. The only thing I can tell you about this chart that isn't written on there is that it's wrong, because there are many deals that are not announced, and some have not yet been announced by companies that are still pulling together their press releases. So whatever the true number is for 2019, it's larger than this one, which for us is, when we started doing this work in 2014, having almost 10 gigawatts of announced deals in 1 year would have been a joke. The question I'm often asked when I look at this chart is, and when other people look at it, is why is it not a nice smooth curve? So to help understand what happened here, we go back to 2015 when there was a piece of tax legislation from the federal government that was due to expire. And as a consequence, many buyers sought to capture a lower PPA price and transacted quite quickly. So the party of 2015 had a hangover in 2016. So for us, what this really means is the first true year in the US market, in my opinion, was 2017, when there was no distortion from tax policy or anything else. And we've seen impressive growth since then. I do question if this is necessarily sustainable. And I'll give you my prediction for what I think the market will do at the end of this little talk. But why? I guess the question is now, buyers are they're procuring a lot of renewable energy, but why are they doing it? So in talking with many corporate buyers in the US, we've tried to distill into 4 areas what is motivating them to undertake these transactions. And I leave this slide here. One of the things that we'll touch on later is the growth in Scope 3 and working with supply chain partners and customer companies. And so understanding the motivation for those transactions is proving to be more and more important. So we're seeing that Some companies are transacting for employees to maintain their employee base. This is typically seen in the high-tech sectors, where employees are asking more of their companies. Brand building, customer retention, and differentiation are also key leading drivers for why companies are undertaking these transactions. Risk management is a third area that is a third large bucket of reasons why businesses are deciding to procure renewable energy. And then lastly, and more generally, managing the stakeholder demands. So from investor relations being the top example here. With all of these pressures that are being placed on businesses, what we're seeing is a lot of companies are getting involved. So the RE100 movement now has over 200 members, and many of which are in Japan and in this room. Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance has 250, I think, and more are coming into the market every single day and are looking at their options. Equally, and as I mentioned a minute ago, many companies are now addressing and thinking about many of the points that Ono-san mentioned around the need for action and the need for action in this decade. And so we've seen that the Science Based Targets Initiative is now picking up speed, and increasingly companies are signing on to setting targets for very stringent reductions in their energy use and their energy carbon intensity. One of the big points here is that all 312 companies that have science-based targets will have some form of a Scope 3 target and goal and ambition within that. That means that if your company is working on a supplier or a customer basis with a company that has a science-based target, you may well get an email from them one day asking what you are, if you haven't already, asking what you are doing. And so I present this small present at the start of 2020, that one of the things we see is the world is becoming more connected, and the sustainability movement within companies is driving that, as companies are looking to support each other, but also incent and motivate each other to become more sustainable in their actions. Taking a step deeper, what we saw in 2019, what I wanted to do here was provide you really a view of which companies are buying. The distribution we see here between the different quarters is quite common, and we've seen that trend for many quarters. But what I think is interesting here is there are a lot of companies on here who you'll have heard of before procuring. Many of the large tech companies, but also looking at this chart, 21 new companies came to the market in 2019. And this chart here, I think, for me, is very important because it really talks to the health of the market. Many businesses, many companies are coming in, and while they have many repeat buyers, we also have many new buyers. And that provides vitality, and in my mind, it moves and evolves the sector forward as service providers and project developers need to react and work with new companies and new company needs and demands, and it creates a more versatile and deeper and diverse market. What we also see is this, which is A, complicated, but B, I quite like it. What we're showing here are the different sectors of companies. And so you can see in 2014 on the left that almost 60% of the sector in the US was based on IT companies. Now, as time has moved, what we've seen is a great number of other sectors really moving in and getting engaged. Indeed, even the kind of the darker brown, let's see if this works, the darker brown there, that is tracking what we've been calling aggregated deals, where multiple companies from many different sectors are coming together and transacting as a one unit in one club. And this we see as a great sign for the future. The diversity in the sector will make it stronger. And so we look forward to each of these bars, each of these sections getting narrower and more colorful. I keep wanting to challenge our team to come up with more colors that don't clash. And I'm hoping they're going to be in trouble fairly soon, because our list on the right-hand side will be too long and too colorful to make any sense. The next point that I think I want to make, that I think carries forward as well as looks back, is around the technology of choice for companies procuring in the US. The green bars represent onshore wind, the gold bars represent solar photovoltaic. And you can clearly see that up until around 2018, wind was by far and away the dominant source, the dominant technology of choice for corporates. But for me, the inflection point, the change that we saw in 2019 really presents a shift in the space, and now is a strong, bold statement that says companies have two choices with solar and wind. That, for me, presents opportunities for innovation. It presents opportunities for different technologies around storage or anything else to really start maximizing what companies can do in this space and further express and further enhance their impact. We see this trend going forward. The need for large buyers to procure at scale will maintain wind projects as part of the mix. But as the market proliferates and we see more smaller buyers coming in that don't need hundreds of megawatts of wind, solar will be the natural choice with its natural modularity. So where are we here? I see the US as really entering a strong third phase, where we have had our initial first movers 6 or 7 years ago. We've had a norming phase in phase 2, where more and more companies have come in, have learned and seen what their peers have done and have been accelerating. And now comes the customization phase. Now we see that PPA term sheets become a little more standardized, that options are becoming off the shelf to reduce transaction costs. And ideally, as we go forward, we see the majority, a large number of buyers coming into the market because the barriers to entry are reducing. So I thought I'd leave you with a couple of predictions. So don't anyone put any bets on this, because it's just me, but I don't want to get sued. But at the same time, this is where I think things will go. So to me, in the near term, I see aggregated transactions as a large growth area. I think that many of the experienced buyers want to support smaller companies coming into this market and help proliferate it. We saw that last year happening in a few different examples. And everything I hear from companies that are more seasoned says that they need to do more transactions, and they can help others do that at the same time. My view is that the US market can stabilize at around 10 gigawatts per year, which is still a very large amount of renewable energy capacity. I think without a step change or some form of accelerated influence, the number of transactions the market can keep up with is around 10 gig, my personal view. In the midterm, so where we'll be looking forward, I personally believe, and this is something for the US, in the US market, that the real estate sector has been fairly absent and yet contributes about 30% or so of US annual GHG emissions. And it's a class of buyer that's not really come to the table. So one of my hopes and one of my predictions is that over the next few years, we can encourage and motivate that class of buyer to come in and mitigate and help the least situation that a lot of companies find themselves in, whilst also becoming a strong buyer class themselves. The second point in the midterm is something that I already sense, and this is where so much demand is pulling the amount of is pulling projects off the market quicker than they can be replaced at the same level of development because of the development timeline. And so what I see there, and so I make this comment for anyone in the room, what I see is that being observant around how developed the project is you're looking to work with, how developed, how close to completion that is, should become more of a question in your mind. My expectation is that the projects that will be offered to you, the 100 projects that come back in from an RFP process, will gradually, on average, become less and less developed as the supply of late stage and well-developed projects starts to get consumed and used up, altering that risk landscape for buyers and making sure, or requiring you to ask different questions. And then lastly, as we've started to see in some other markets, interestingly, cost savings, I think, will be a transaction driver for smaller buyers. As the cost of renewables continues to fall, as we see the other side on the fossil side certainly not being able to reduce the same and potentially going the other way. And lastly, small plug, I believe that Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, my boss, will hit our target by 2025. But so hopefully that answered the questions that I set out to. Hopefully that also provided some insight into the US market. It's a market I believe to watch, but I think that, as Ono-san said, this next 10 years are the ones that count. And I think the US market is fairly well poised for that. And the lessons learned from that market, I think, can be taken to many places and hopefully accelerate the transition in many other markets. Thank you very much. Arigato.
マークさんありがとうございました。続きまして。
Thank you very much, Mark. Now, the latest trends in Europe from Eco Energy. Ms. Merv Gungar will be the next speaker. Eco Energy is centered in Europe. Renewable energy is being assessed, and labels are issued by this NGO. Merv, the floor.
こんにちは、皆様。
Good afternoon. My name is Merv from Eco Energy, Eco Label. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I'd like to thank people at Renewable Energy Institute. I think it should be simpler if I speak in one single language, so I will speak in English.
Energy, and I will briefly talk about the market developments in Europe. First of all, I will give you 3 points, which I would summarize as the main trends in Europe. And then I will go a bit into the detail and talk about recent figures about how the market is developing in Europe, and different types of renewable energy, different technologies. And I will make use of graphs from the recent last year's REX International report, mainly. And then I will talk about what the Renewable Energy Directive in Europe and what implications will that have for the voluntary consumption of renewable energy, and what the experiences in Europe so far teach us about the market development. And I will also mention the EECS countries. EECS stands for European Energy Certification System. And there are some updates about that. I will briefly talk about that. And also the EU's Green New Deal. Maybe some of you have heard about it. And also EU's targets about renewable energy. So I would say the first big trend in Europe has been increasing popularity of renewable energy use, of voluntary renewable energy use. And if you compare it to 5 years ago, there are now a lot of options available for the consumers. In the Resource Platforms report, Corporate Buyers Toolkit, they name 14 methods of purchasing renewable energy. 12 of these methods have already examples that have taken place in Europe. And market players' roles are basically becoming more flexible. This means the consumers' demand. It depends on their, it depends on different consumer sectors or preferences regarding renewable energy. And they demand this from utilities, they demand this from their energy companies, they demand this from environmental service providers. So, and the sector is of course meeting this demand, which results in a diversification of options available for corporates. And here I especially included the part the PPAs play in renewable energy use in Europe. Well, in 2016, it was only 4%, and in 2017, it rose to 5%. So we see power purchase agreements are still making up a small segment of the market. In Europe, the common way to purchase renewables is through green energy tariffs because it is easily available. And the second main trend I would mention is increasing interest in standardization and involvement of different stakeholders, such as NGOs. CDP is one of them, and the RE100 as well. It is very important that corporates are showing interest, and they are uniting under this initiative, saying we are going 100% renewable. And with the launch of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol in 2015, these are more or less the same timing with the launch of the RE100 initiative as well. It gives a signal to the market. There is increasing demand and there is increasing involvement from NGO stakeholders as well. And lastly, growing interest in different types of renewables. When we say renewables, it's usually electricity. However, in Europe, also there is increasing demand for renewable gas, renewable heating and cooling as well, because depending on the sector, heating and cooling also makes a big part of a company's carbon emissions. And I will mention in the following slides, according to the new Renewable Energy Directive of the EU, member states will be required to develop tracking systems, just like for electricity. They will need to develop tracking systems for renewable gas and heating and cooling as well. So this is a graph from the REX International report. Here, yes. So this is terawatt hour based, and here you see it says supported, not certified. So it is this light green color. And the reason is that in France and Germany, if a renewable energy power plant has received subsidies, no GOs, GO stands for Guarantee of Origin, which is the electricity tracking certificate being used in Europe. So it's shortened as GO. So no GOs were issued for power plants that has received subsidies. I said were because in France, they have started an auction system in 2018. So that's why here you also see a, so because this was the situation in 2018, the basically generation that took place in these countries, recently installed generation, didn't receive any GOs. But this also shows us how fast the market is moving. What happens, what is estimated for the next 6 months becomes already old. And here you see the volumes that are available for certification but not certified. In one of the next graphs, you will see that it is expected to decrease because the market is growing. So the first graph here shows the types of technology. It is easy to notice that this dark blue is for wind energy, and it makes up most of the installed capacity of PPAs, not in Europe, but in the EMEA region, in Middle East, Africa, and Europe. And I included this graph because the companies that undertook these PPA agreements, they are mostly European companies. And here you see a graph showing the PPA agreements depending on the country. It can be maybe a bit difficult to see these colors here, but you can find the same graph at the resource platforms report. So there is a lot going here, but let's start from this graph. So as you see, in Europe, hydropower is still the main source of renewable energy. And you see that generation, this yellow line, the geo generation was increasing, and so is the geo issuance. The second most popular renewable energy source is wind, and you see biomass here, the first one, despite some environmental controversies, geo issuance and cancellation from biomass sources is increasing in Europe. I would like to mention, so here I have included the flags of the countries where the issuance and cancellation has taken place. But one thing here to keep in mind is it does not necessarily show where the consumption is taking place, because the EU is one market. So we are talking about 28 or 27 countries, but this is one single market. So for example, here you see Norway as a large hydropower producer, and here you see Norway has canceled more solar GOs. So these are details about the European market, because even though it is one single market, each country, of course, can have their own rules and regulations. So I don't want to explain a lot in detail about that, but one thing I would like to mention about solar generation is that Spain and Italy are leading the market with 65% of providing 65% of the GOs that are in the European market. But consumption, so the cancellation does not, they don't match the production rate. This is because Spain and Italy have a rule that only energy companies can cancel GOs. So this makes the market situation difficult for different service providers. So I'm mentioning this because you can look at the correct data, but it is easy to interpret it in the wrong way. So here, also one thing I would like to mention about wind energy. Dutch electric trains became 100% wind energy. They became powered by wind energy 100%. So that is part of the reason that explains why wind GO cancellations are increasing. So basically, it's I will repeat again, but this is a very fast-moving market, and I will mention in the following slides with the with the country's national policies that will come following the new Renewable Energy Directive. We will see a lot of increasing wind energy demand as well. So I briefly mentioned the biomass. There are controversies in Europe regarding biomass, because especially if we take the recent plastic pollution news into account, there are question marks in Europe regarding is producing electricity from biomass the best way to make use of biomass. So that's why there are some studies being done and some considerations regarding bioenergy. And and these considerations didn't exist more or less 3-5 years ago, so the market is changing very fast. And what does the new Renewable Energy Directive mean for the renewable energy market? I will mainly talk about the consumption of voluntary renewable energy because this directive is very broad, but to summarize how it impacts renewable energy consumption, first of all, I'd like to mention that cost-effective support systems will become the standard across Europe because countries will have higher renewable energy targets. And in Denmark, already unsupported renewable installations have been made. So the era of unsupported renewables is also coming soon. And as I mentioned earlier, the member states of the EU will prepare a tracking system for renewable gas, heat, and cooling as well. And the EECS standard I mentioned earlier will be replaced by SEN standard. I will bring this up in one of the following slides. So this is also a graph from the REX International report, compound annual growth rate based forecast. So here you see this, this color, the generation that has taken place but not certified. It is expected to disappear in 2023. And the supported, not certified generation, here it increases. However, France, Italy, and Luxembourg have auction systems, which means the GOs from power plants that have received subsidies will actually be in the market, but based on an auction system. So what we don't see in this graph is the policy implications that the new Renewable Energy Directive will bring. The member states' national policies will be in, they will start following the new Renewable Energy Directive from 2021 June. So next year onwards, we will see how these policy implications are seen in the market. And speaking about the European market experience and what it shows us, I can mention the importance of a standardized tracking system, which is called GOs, the renewable energy certificates used in Europe. It is important for growth and development because it makes it easier, basically, to use. It is user-friendly. It makes it easier for especially multinationals to start using renewable energy. And it simplifies the choice of renewables. And trust is, of course, an important factor. So having a standard creates a reliable basis for the tracking system. And it eliminates implementation problems when starting a new system. So imagine if the 28 countries in Europe all were experimenting with their own national tracking systems. It would be very difficult. But when there is like one standard being followed by many countries, it saves time and costs, and the lessons that would be learned in trial and failure method. So that is definitely one advantage of having the tracking system that is supported by a strong standard. So speaking of standardization, the EECS system, which I mentioned earlier, was a voluntary system. So it will be replaced by the SEN standard, and it will be an EU-wide standard. So it will be more of a obligation than just a voluntary standard countries may choose to follow. So which means standardization will become the norm. and it will make transactions easier. And the EU-level standardization will be the backbone of the geo system. And I will mention the EECS countries in the following slide. And so it won't be only the countries that choose to follow the standard, but it will be a obligatory standard for EU countries to follow. So here we see the non-EECS countries at the moment in this group 3 and 4. So this dark green and light green color. So you see most of the Eastern Europe and Portugal here. And so basically, and by the way, the UK here, they have their own geo system, which is called the RIGO. So basically, it will, right now, the EECS countries, so the other two colors, like these two lighter shades of green, since they use one system, cross-country transactions are also easier, and we will basically observe and see how this new SEN standard will impact the market. And lastly, EU's new Green Deal. Again, I won't go into the detail about the whole Green New Deal, but speaking of energy, decarbonization of the energy sector is one important pillar, because 75% of EU's carbon emissions are because of production and consumption of renewable energy. So the EU will become carbon neutral by 2050, which is a bit too late from an environmental NGO point of view. But we see here 11 countries have already announced their plans to ban use of coal for electricity generation. And here we see the target set by the Renewable Energy Directive. So it is 32% for renewable energy, 40% for greenhouse gas emission reductions, and at least 27% of energy savings. And environmental organizations suggest at least 65% of emission reductions, at least 45% of renewable energy, and 40% of energy savings. So these are the sources I have used. The presentation will be available after the event, so you can feel free to check. And thank you very much. Since this is Friday, I wanted to conclude in a Fridays for Future note. This is some of my team. You see, we were in front of the Finnish Parliament campaigning for more climate action. Thank you very much.
フェリペさん、ありがとうございました。
Next, from Asia, we would like to hear from Dr. Jo Seo-jung. He is based in Taiwan, providing consulting services for Mount Sergei and green asset management. Please.
Thank you, Ishida-san, for inviting me, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for everyone being here. I'm from Taiwan, and Ishida-san asked me to give a brief introduction of Asian renewable energy market. So we agreed to cover 5 markets. Okay, and here is the outline of my presentations. We'll start with the Asian market overviews, and then we'll briefly introduce the available market instruments in East Asia, and then also give a little bit deep dives for IREC, that for the organization I'm a board member of, and then the appendixes for your reference about my company and myself. Okay, the 5 markets that we are going to cover, starting from China, and then Taiwan, and then Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand, where a lot of Japanese companies have their foreign manufacturing base factories located. For these 5 markets, basically they all have their own renewable targets in the next 10 to 15 years, and all are pretty aggressive. And if you look at the number on the right in the yellow columns, they are more or less halfway already, but accomplishing their goal is pretty challenging for the remaining half. And here is the outlook based on the announcements. Most of them are still heavily relying on fossil fuels, but for example, Vietnam has a good hydro resources as well as Indonesia, and then also China, where you can see the bigger percentage of it. And individually, let's look at this market individually. Taiwan, starting 2017, we have this Renewable Energy Development Act that basically liberalized the renewable-based electricity to be traded on the market. But the detailed plan is yet to release. But along the way, down the road, we would be expecting that green PPA will be available in Taiwan in the next year or two. We already see a few small pioneer cases which hasn't been largely commercialized, but the trend is already on track. China is, on the other hand, is a very totally different stories. On one hand, it's big, and second, it faces a few challenges. First, maybe a lot of you already learned that the renewable-based electricity distribution in China is facing serious curtailment due to several technical and financial reasons. And these obstacles has been difficulty for Chinese government to overcome for further renewable market development. Second, Chinese renewable market is phasing out their subsidy-based encouragement policies and being replaced by market-based, meaning user-paid. And because of this, starting this year, 2020, China is welcoming their so-called subsidy-free or zero-subsidy era starting 2020s. So from this year, we would start to see renewable projects development without receiving any subsidies. And then this is the trend for subsidies because Chinese FIT is premium-based. So this is the premium awarded to renewable projects based on their benchmark pricings. And you can see that for solar and for winds, the premium is decreasing substantially, and from 2020, it's close to zero. Okay, and in order to continue the development of renewable markets, Chinese government also launched a market-based, similar to what we have here in Japan, the green certificate schemes. And it started 3 years ago, hasn't been really largely expanded because the opportunity cost for green certificate has been linked with the subsidy, the premiums. But since the premium is decreasing to close to zero levels, we are expecting that the green certificate market in China would be expected to take off from this year too. And here is the non-subsidized project announcement made by the Chinese government last May. They already approved over 200 projects to be built without subsidies. And here are the three follow-up tools that Chinese government would adopt to ensure the stable renewable project development under zero subsidy era. First is give the priority to grid connection for renewable-based projects. And then second is to introduce market-based schemes, meaning certificate. And then later they will also allow bilateral PPA, corporate PPAs. And for Southeast Asia, Vietnam, for the three markets that we examined, Vietnam and Indonesia and Thailand, they share more or less the same situation as of now. they are vertically integrated, heavily regulated. So market-based mechanism is yet to start. But all these market has very aggressive renewable targets. So we expecting that the market mechanism will be on the way. Okay, and in general, for renewable markets, either it's in Asia or it's in US or in Europe, the most common one is, most common market instrument is certificates. So it's called GEO in Europe and called REG in US and called Green Denmark Social or Hikaseki Social here in Japan and in other places similar. Second would be, the second scheme would be the FIT. It's either index and the premium based like what we have, like what we see in China, or fixed pricing, like what we have in Taiwan, and also in Japan. And then the next common market instrument will be bilateral and corporate PPAs, similar to what Mark has introduced to us. And then the last, actually, I think the last options is pretty common in Japan, as I spoke with a few gentlemen over lunch. The big company, renewable energy company in Japan, usually they start from on-site generations, and then from there they learn the market of renewable options, and then from there they expand their kind of coverage of renewable to off-site options. And this is very simple conceptual diagram explaining how the certificate being generated, being consolidated, and being consumed and cancelled. So when when 1 unit of electricity being generated from renewable-based asset, from renewable-based power plant, we consider 1 kilowatt hours will be associated with 1 kilowatt hour of 1 kilowatt hour of energy will be associated with 1 kilowatt hour of environmental attribute, and these two components can be traded together, so-called bundled, or separately, so-called unbundled, depending on the market scheme designed. In Japan, we see both. In Taiwan, we also see both. In China, we also see both. In some market, like Merve just mentioned, in Germany or France, only bundled is possible through auctions. In US, mostly unbundled, right? So, and there are pros and cons that we can go into the detail if you are interested. But that also means through these different types of models that fits different purpose through the different phases of market development that helps the market develop along the ways. And this is a general overlook for the global renewable market on the certificate side. So the dark, this start from the green one is where GEO is prevailing, and then the US, the Northern American market is in yellow, and then Australia, Japan, and actually Korea also have their own local schemes, but the majority of the rest of the world are being served by international REG standard or IREG standards. Okay, so here is shoulder-by-shoulder comparisons that gives you this 5 market that we just cross-checked. So each country has their own certificate schemes, as well as some countries, some markets have IREG present. And in most countries, bilateral PPA is not possible yet, with the exception in Taiwan. But as I just mentioned, it's just started. And for fully commercialized scale, we would have to wait for maybe another year or 2. And for on-site generations, you could potentially consider in Taiwan and China. Okay, and these are the 3 dominant certificate schemes in Taiwan and China, together with IREG, that for your reference. But you probably noticed that the price for T-REG and C-REG are very expensive. It's for the similar reason that what we see here of Hikaseki Shosho and Green Denek Shosho, because it's indexed to the subsidies. Okay, and quickly go through IRAC. IRAC started in 2015, including me with a few colleagues based in US and Europe, that we saw the gap, the needs that for country and the market where haven't had the local renewable scheme present. Maybe IRAC can provide the function and provide service to enable the renewable attribute tradings. So similar, I mean, the same as GEO or REC or Green Denek Shosho here, one certificates represent 1 megawatt hours. At the moment, the IRAC is recognized by important international schemes, initiatives that makes IRAC trustworthy. And IRAC, the way that IRAC work is follow the design of X in Europe, that hopefully that we would have a local issuer for the country and the market that IRAC is available and operating. But at the moment, it's not fully implemented yet. In the 25 plus country market IRAC is operating, we have 6 regional issuers. So 1 in South America, 2 in South America, 1 in Middle East, and 1 for global, and 1 for Israel. So that's 6, right? Yes. Okay, in the past 12 months, starting from September 2018 to ending in August 2019, IRAC issued about 20 terawatt hours, which is roughly 5% of geo market. For the 25 countries that IRAC is servicing, this is really very small. But compared to where we started 5 years ago, in 2015, we only issued about 0.5 terawatt hours. So we are 40 times bigger in 5 years. So that's already very cheerful. And hopefully that the IRAC will continue to grow and continue to help the country and markets grow their renewable sectors. Okay, and then following a few examples that we collect from public source, that for big corporates, a leading company who has been adopting renewable solutions toward their renewable goals, and starting from Apple and then H&M, Unilever, SGS, and the next slide shows a few Japanese company and European companies. Okay, that's all from me, and that's about my company. Thank you very much.
ジールさんありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Jules. At the next session, we look at advanced companies using renewable energies across their global businesses. There will be 3 businesses. First is Google.
Next, representing financial institution, we would like to hear about what is being done at Goldman Sachs. From New York, Ms. Cindy Kwan is here to tell us about what Goldman Sachs is doing, following the presentation by an IT company, Google.
Ishida-san, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak at the summit today about Goldman's global renewable energy strategy. My name is Cindy Kwan, and I'm the Global Head of Environmental, Social, and Governance within our Corporate Services and Real Estate team here at Goldman Sachs. Today, I wanted to start off our conversation about the firm's long-standing environmental journey over the past 15 years, as you can see on the slide here. Goldman has had a history of leading and executing on environmental sustainability initiatives, which was formalized within the establishment of our Environmental Policy Framework, or EPF, back in 2005. Our EPF provided us with a roadmap for how we leverage our commercial businesses to address critical environmental issues while serving our clients and our stakeholders. A prerequisite tenet which formed the core of our strategy back in 2005 was to ensure that we minimized our environmental footprint and drove best practices in our own operations and our supply chain. So truly creating a plan to walk the walk in this space. Now, between 2005 and 2015, we made significant progress in furthering the firm's efforts on tracking and reporting against our original commitments, realizing that we needed to be more transparent for how we accounted for our carbon emissions, how we were building our facilities, and whether or not they were certified to globally recognized standard like BREEAM and LEED, and what information we were disclosing about the types of products we were sourcing and providing to the people in our cafeterias and our pantry. So as you can see from this timeline, we began disclosing more information and the details about our environmental programs to those disclosure agencies like CDP and DJSI, and we've been doing so ever since. So to that end, 10 years into our journey, we realized that we needed to revise our original environmental policy framework to include hard metrics in order to remain a best-in-class corporate citizen, which would serve as a roadmap for our continued journey and progress on the environmental sustainability road across our global operations by 2020. These targets included renewable energy, energy efficiency, water, waste, and green buildings across all of these managed services by our corporate services and real estate team. Since 2015, our focus has been on global alignment across each of these environmental platforms, ensuring that our procurement strategies and our workplace standards were consistent region to region, addressing each of these 2020 targets. Now, fast forward to last year in 2019, on December 15th, our chairman and CEO, David Solomon, published an op-ed in the Financial Times that announced our commitment to deepen and integrate sustainable finance expertise across our businesses, our products, and our services. Also, as part of that goal, we announced 9 new growth themes rooted in 10 years of market research that focus on climate transition and inclusive growth. Over the next 10 years, we will also target $750 billion in financing, investing, and advisory activities across each of these themes. We also announced, and very pleased, a new suite of operational commitments by 2025. These new commitments continue to expand our own environmental actions and work towards continued leadership to demonstrate environmental best practices. We were the first U.S. company to join all 3 of the climate group's global initiatives around renewable energy, RE100, electric vehicles, or EP100, and energy productivity, given the alignment with our own 2020 and 2025 commitments. So, with nearly 15 years of awards and environmental milestones, Goldman is recognized as an industry leader amongst rapidly increasing expectations and market opportunities in the environmental sustainability landscape. We have continued to expand our programs to maintain our leadership position in order to stay ahead of the market. If we're not continuously raising the bar, we know that we are falling behind given the increasing market, client, and shareholder expectations focused on environmental sustainability in today's economy. So, with that background, I wanted to take a quick moment to speak about the area within the firm that I represent, which is our corporate services and our real estate team. We manage approximately 12 million square feet of the firm's corporate portfolio across 221 global locations, 166 cities, and 34 countries. Our team is also responsible for providing all of the services and the amenities to the people of Goldman Sachs, including our hospitality and cafeteria operations, event planning, document management, and global travel. Now, within corporate services and real estate, the team that I manage, which is ESG, we work across each of our business lines to ensure that we are managing our workplace in the most sustainable manner for our buildings, our people, and our communities. We look after all of the data that underpins each of the future forward sustainability commitments. Now, talking a little bit about achieving our climate commitments, one of the key areas of focus within our operations has been the firm's carbon and energy footprint. As part of a 2015 environmental policy framework, we took a bold step forward at the time and put forth an ambitious set of carbon and energy commitments for 2020 to ensure we were leading in a best-in-class framework. Our carbon reduction framework underpins our strategy on how we achieve these commitments, and on this screen, addressing carbon neutrality, achieving 10% reduction in our absolute energy use, and meeting 100% renewable energy procurement for all of our global electricity consumption. Two components of this framework include reducing our energy use and our gross emissions through energy efficiency projects and real estate consolidation, and secondly, sourcing renewable energy for our electricity needs. Both energy management and renewable sourcing remain core to our ongoing achievement of carbon neutrality, and we have expanded these targets as part of our 2025 commitments, including a focus on sourcing more direct renewable energy in order to further drive market growth. So as you can see on this slide, we are focusing on ensuring that 80% of our procurement is from a combination of PPAs and on-site generation moving forward. I think this is a bold step for us away from our traditional sourcing methods, which is focused on procuring unbundled renewable energy certificates. Now, in order to meet our commitments, we follow the following key business drivers that guide our role as a market participant and also a market maker. And I'm beginning to think that we need to take some lessons learned from Leo and his team at Google and pare down our business drivers so we can get these done faster in the next couple of years. So first and foremost, we seek solutions that are commercially viable, which allows us to pave the way for others in the market. Second, we manage our risk exposure through innovative contracting structures, which can be replicated in the market through lessons learned and thought leadership forums like these. Third, data drives our decision-making, so we want to ensure real and robust analysis on the impacts as we measure our progress against our space. We can only manage what we measure with data. And then lastly, we seek to drive the development of new technologies, strengthening the availability and the performance of the renewable energy market, not only as the market expands as an off-taker, but also a market maker through our renewable asset management team. And going forward, we seek to apply these business drivers to our sourcing of more direct renewable energy, as I mentioned, 80% from long-term contracts. Historically, we have purchased unbundled renewable energy certificate, or RECs, for the majority of our global needs. As we work towards this 80% target of our needs with more directly sourced low-carbon purchases, several specific principles will guide our approach. So first, promoting sustainability by reducing our reliance on fossil fuels is a core component of this approach, supporting both our carbon commitments and a broader transition to a low-carbon economy. Second, providing transparency regarding the technology, location, and vintage of our purchases will ensure continued development of a robust market and will keep us honest to our commitments. Third, prioritizing sourcing from new facilities located near our operations will ensure the greatest impact and growth in the markets in which we operate. Fourth, in ensuring to select the highest quality projects to minimize our environmental risks. And finally, but not least, seeking to optimize our costs over the project lifetime in order to achieve these commitments in the most economical way. Now, the progress we have made in the carbon and energy space are best shown on this slide. We've been very focused, as I mentioned, on optimizing our usage of these resources since 2005, while balancing and supporting the firm's growth initiatives. This chart illustrates our progress over this time, stabilizing our energy use and reducing our carbon impact, even as the firm grows over the last 15 years. So, at the start of our environmental journey, we made a commitment to greening our real estate portfolio through the design and construction of LEED certified spaces. This commitment, in addition to smart real estate utilization through the consolidation of older buildings into newer, more efficient buildings in our New York, London, and Bengaluru campuses, continues to drive down our carbon footprint. As you can see, the impacts of our growth and development prior to 2010, and the light blue line on this chart, where our energy use increased primarily due to the increased data center capacity and the dual operations of our new and existing buildings in our New York campus, and then the effects of the consolidation on our energy profile as we moved into our new headquarters building in New York between 2009 and 2010. From 2010 to 2015, we focused on investing funds into energy efficiency projects in our existing facilities to continue to drive down our absolute energy use. In 2015, we achieved carbon neutrality as a firm globally for all of our global facilities and business travel, driven by investments in energy efficiency projects that brought down our gross carbon emissions, supplemented with the procurement of renewable energy certificates and carbon offsets, represented by the red line on this graph. As you can see, from 2015 moving forward, it stays at 0. Also in 2015, we targeted the sourcing of 100% renewable energy, building on our successes in efficient space management and catalyzing on our commitment to responsible energy procurement. Now, as you can see from the green line on this chart, our investment in renewable energy certificates jumped in 2015 as a result of our RE100 commitment. The light blue bars on this chart represent our absolute energy use as of 2019. Now, from 2015 to 2019, we were focused on executing on the second component of our strategy, which was real estate consolidation in both our Bengaluru and our London campus, exiting out of older, inefficient buildings and moving into LEED Platinum and BREEAM Excellent certified spaces. Utilizing renewable energy continues to be the core component of our ongoing carbon neutral achievement, and we are on track to achieve RE100 by the end of this year in 2020. We're currently at about 98% globally. And as our program continues to evolve, we are aiming to source direct, impactful, new renewable energy for 80% of our global needs, which will be focused on the US, the UK, India, and Australia markets. Now, bringing it more locally, which is why we are here today, we're very excited to showcase this case study with our partnership with Mori Building for our energy use directly here in Roppongi Hills. Over the past 2.5 years, we have leveraged the help of REI, the Renewable Energy Institute, along with Mark's team at the Business Renewables Council in REBA, along with our landlord in Roppongi Hills, to establish a process to source renewable energy to cover our usage in this building. We have about 4 floors in Roppongi Hills. In 2017, a new non-fossil fuel energy certificate was introduced into the market. These certificates through the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, METI, serve as proof that the electricity generated originates from renewable energy sources covered by the Feed-in Tariff Scheme for Renewable Energy, or FIT, that Jules had talked about, and establishes a non-fossil fuel energy value trading market in which market participants are able to trade the environmental value in the form of a certificate. Retailers such as Mori are able to sell this electricity under the certificate to consumers where the electricity is validated as renewable energy. Now, in August of 2019, so now we're 2 years into our process, we became the first tenant in Roppongi Hills to use renewable energy with the help of Mori Building, securing these non-fossil fuel certificates through the energy auction equivalent to the energy consumed in our facilities. We hope to be able to replicate this model in partnership with other landlords across the Asia-Pacific region. In terms of next steps, as we approach RE100, we're setting on sights on what is next for us in our journey. As I mentioned, our 2025 commitments include sourcing more than renewable energy, likely from direct, impactful, and long-term agreements throughout our global operations. However, with this ambition obviously comes a number of challenges, especially with our diverse global portfolio of our operations, as you saw a couple slides back, which requires many individual transactions to secure energy year over year that is matched with our footprint in each of these markets. As markets get more sophisticated, we evaluate new technologies that may be further aligned to our sourcing of renewable energy generation at the time of use at our facilities. So on the flip side of this, we also operate in several countries with nascent renewable energy markets where sourcing options continue to remain limited, hence why we're still at 98% in our RE100 goals. So as we strive to drive the market forward and engage in longer-term contracts for newer renewable projects across all markets, there can be increased sourcing risks, including hurdles during development that may significantly delay and prevent the project from being built. Though there are challenges, each provides an opportunity in the pursuit of our own objectives for growth and transformation in the market. As our pursuit of renewables grows, we collect better insight on both our operations and the market, and can streamline future renewable energy purchases to realize cost savings and renewable benefits. In smaller, more nascent markets where we have a small presence, for example, in the APAC market, we have an opportunity to drive growth as the market matures. And as we learn of new risks in these markets, we can develop new procurement structures and support new technologies to mitigate or manage these risks, which others can also leverage as the market grows. We also hope to partner with other corporates. As Mark had mentioned, aggregation is a big focus for us. In those markets where our consumption may be too small by itself to enable the development of new projects. And we hope that our ambitions encourage others to join us towards a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Cindy さん、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Cindy. Now, regarding IT and the financial service was not covered, but now in the area of we have heard for the financial institutions and as well as IT, but today we'll also be hearing from the consumer products as well. The speaker will be Mr. Seikei Ito, Head of Communications of Unilever Japan. The presentation will be in Japanese. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Ito of Unilever Japan. Time is very limited, but from the Secretariat, I was requested to cover 3 areas. First point is regarding how to reduce environmental burden. What are the initiatives we are implementing? And the second area is the use of renewable energies. Third, what is the impact of a sustainable business? These are the 3 areas that I shall be focused upon in my presentation, although time is very limited. On a personal note, I would like to say that several days ago, I had my birthday. It is 90 years. Here, Unilever, I'm not 90, but Unilever has also celebrated in January of 2020 90 years of the company. I would like to first of all talk about Unilever, the company. I'm sure you're familiar with Unilever. We are the largest consumer goods company in the world, and we have business in 190 countries of the world. Every day, 2.5 people typically use our products somewhere in the world. This chart shows some of our brands. For example, in Japan, Lux is available, Dove, and Lipton, the tea brand, must be familiar for all of you. I'm sure you have tasted these products or used these products. We have 13 brands in Japan. Globally, there are 400 brands for Unilever. In terms of sales, it is around 6.42 trillion yen. Yesterday, we have announced the performance for 2019. This is the number for 2018. According to yesterday's announcement, we have grown revenues by 2.9%, so it is larger than this. The number of employees are 155,000 globally. So that is all in terms of the scale of Unilever. Now we are operating our business in 190 countries of the world, but the origin of Unilever is represented here in the product of Sunlight household soap. In the 1890s, a very long time ago, in the UK, Lever Brothers was a company that was established, and at that time there was a social problem. The social problem was that the mortality rate of children reaching 5 years old was around 50% because of lack of hygiene. That is the reason why this Sunlight soap was introduced by the Lever Brothers company. At the same time, in the Netherlands, Margaret and Uni was a company that was established. And I'm sure you can imagine what they are producing. It was a company that was manufacturing as well as distributing margarine. So Unilever and Margarine Uni was merged to form Unilever in 1930. The Lever Brothers in the UK wanted to solve the social problem of children losing their lives before 5 years old by providing soap. And margarine was made available for people who were suffering from malnutrition in the Netherlands. So in both cases, were very passionate about social issues and working very hard over the years to provide solutions. At that time, in terms of nutrition as well as hygiene sufficed in terms of social problems. But the world today is becoming more complex, beset with many social problems. In 2010, our vision was announced globally. Unilever is a profit-making company, therefore we have to grow our business in a continuous manner. But as we try to grow our business, we will be producing more products. So usually, if we follow along this trajectory, we will also be providing a burden on the environment, but we would like to minimize that. At the same time, also contribute to society. This was the vision that was introduced in 2020. So, how are we going to achieve this goal? At the same time, the framework was announced. It is called the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. It comprises 3 pillars. First is healthy lives. Second is to reduce the burden on environment by 1/2. And the third pillar is economic growth. These are all very much related to our core business. Today, I shall focus on the middle pillar, reducing the impact on environment in terms of greenhouse gases as well as water and waste, areas that we will be focused on reducing. Let me talk about the progress made so far in terms of greenhouse gases. This is data for 2018, comparing against 2010. We have achieved a reduction of minus 52%. In terms of water usage, reduced by 44%. In terms of waste, reduced by 97%. Therefore, very good results have been achieved over the years. Now, our commitment, as well as toward RE, as well as progress made, will be explained by 2030. We are aspiring to become a carbon positive company. What is meant by carbon positive will be explained. The more than energy that is used by Unilever will make further investments, and for the excess thereof will be returned to the community. That is what we mean by carbon positive. Progress has been made in 2050. In Japan, the energy that is used by a company has been converted to 100% to renewable energies. The method we have adopted was that for the two plants in Sagamihara and also the other plant in Shizuoka Prefecture, was the focus. In these plants, at the site, solar panels installment was considered. However, the plant was not large enough to make this viable, and the energy to be used in the plant could not be generated by solar panels. Therefore, we have decided to use the green certificate. Last year, in 2019, 1 year ahead of schedule, in the 5-continent operations, inclusive of office, laboratories, plants, data center, and delivery centers, we were able to convert 100% to renewable energies. So, what are we doing? I have talked about the Japanese examples previously, but in Japan, we are using the tradable green certificate. And according to the usage of electricity, we are using the tradable green certificates. In 2015, Unilever Japan has introduced this, and within Unilever, we were the first to adopt such a system. In the personal care business in Japan, we was the largest conversion made to renewable energies. We also have many supporting plants where we are outsourcing production in the subsequent year. In 2016, for the major outsourcing source plants, we have adopted the same system. For the consumers, these initiatives should be communicated. Therefore, when you using our products, please refer to the labeling. It should have the green power label attached. It means that the product has been produced using green energy. It is a certification thereof. And there are products that do not have this label yet. In order to attach this label, we have to change the mold, the typeset. That means that it will be too much burden on the environment. That is the reason why we are not using this in some products, even though green energy is being used. Let me talk about other countries' examples. This is in the UK. Wind power is being used. Enerco UK in Scotland, Highlands, energy is being produced using wind power generation. Unilever is the sole beneficiary of this power generated. As you can see here, 165 kilowatt hour, or 87% of the electricity is being purchased by Unilever UK according to the contract. The excess power is provided to the community. We are not just utilizing wind power, but biomethane is also being used. The impact of sustainability on business will now be addressed. We believe there are 4 benefits that can be enjoyed. First is the reduction of risk. On our part, we are producing many products, and more than 50% of the raw materials are agricultural products. And by having a sustainable procurement, we can reduce risk. The second is the acceleration of growth. For example, in the case of Dove or Ben & Jerry's, in the core of the brand, we are positioning sustainability. Compared to other brands, it drives growth according to corporate data. So we believe the second benefit is that such initiatives will drive growth. The third point is enhancement of reliability. And we are routinely hiring in 60 countries of the world. In 50 out of 60, we are the most popular company to work for, according to university students. Therefore, it will lead to the enhancement of trust. The fourth point is cost reduction. By focus on sustainability, there is tendency for people to think that it will be incremental cost. There is incremental cost to a certain extent, but in terms of waste, compared to 2010, and we were able to reduce by 97% in 2080. So that means that we are able to reduce cost in other areas. Therefore, through sustainable activities, these benefits can be enjoyed. This is my last slide. On the part of the company, as I mentioned at the outset, we have celebrated the 90th anniversary of the company. During the 90 years, the initiatives toward the sustainability as well as business growth can coexist. We have been able to prove that over the decades. And in the next 9 decades going forward in the sustainability area, we hope that we can exert further leadership. That is our aspiration for the next generation. One company alone cannot bring about change. That is the reason why I hope that we can work with the companies represented here to do what we can to make the world better. It was a short presentation. However, I would like to bring my presentation to a close. Thank you.
鈴木様ありがとう。
Thank you very much, Mr. Ito. The next session is about Japanese advanced corporates. There will be 3 cases. The largest power user in Japan, Aeon. General Manager, Corporate Citizen Department, Mr. Takahiro Suzuki. Suzuki-san. Good afternoon. At Aeon, I am in charge of the sustainability for the group. I am Suzuki. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to talk about cases of how we procure renewable energy. We have mainly on-site cases that I would like to introduce today at our group, not only in Japan but across the world in 14 countries. We have almost 22,000 retail stores, outlets, as was introduced in Japan. We spend 1% of the total power consumption of our country. In that sense, you would wonder if we are eco-friendly, but that indeed symbolizes the size of our business. Our facilities, the history, eco-friendly stores had to be created as of 2005. This is Aeon Town Chikusa, labeled Eco Store on the left-hand side. This was the first eco-friendly store. Now we call it Smart Aeon. CO2 emission, it is more than 30% lower than the traditional stores if we call them eco-friendly. We have Aeon Decarbonization Vision 2050 to go to CO2 emission zero in the future. We are now trying to make our retail stores where the CO2 emission will be half, 50% of the traditional stores, and we are working hard on realizing such eco-friendly half-emission stores. By 2030, 35% of CO2 emission reduction is our goal. What approaches are the best is what we are studying. Of course, energy saving is part of our effort, but use of renewables, how much we can procure renewable would be one of the focus. At this moment, by 2030, at least our renewable procurement should be 10% of what we need. As one of the methods to realize our goal, as has been mentioned, the existing renewables direct procurement is one of the way. At our headquarters, we already use renewables. In our retail outlets, rooftop solar panels are installed. Already, we have been working on rooftop tiles. This is Zama store, and in these car parks and the stores, you can see there are panels, and about 1,000 kilowatt is the generation capacity. You can see it is just entirely covered by solar panels. In addition to these larger shopping centers, we have small supermarket. Plus, we have a mini stop, the convenience store. We have tiny stores like this, or drug stores is part of our business. So in large city centers and small stores, we are increasing this outlet. Looking at the power consumption for the entire group, rather than the large shopping centers, these small stores or drug stores are the area where our business is expanding is important for us. Therefore, to these smaller increasing outlets, how we shift to renewables is our challenge. Outside of Japan, for example, in Vietnam, this is the so-called carport. In addition to the rooftop of the stores, in this kind of carport or motorbike port, we have these modules. Indonesia, this is a large facility. JCM, the crediting mechanism, is used to install panels. This is Cambodia. This is a very large shopping center. So for our overseas outlets, our plan is to accelerate opening new overseas stores. So the most advanced eco-friendly stores will be our goal. Having said that, it's a but. The blue bar indicates our plan of solar PV deployment, and the red is actual. So for Aeon Group, at more than 1,000 stores, we have installed solar panels, but between our plan and the actual installment, there is a huge gap. How to close the gap? How to achieve our goals of solar panel installment? This has been a difficulty for us. What we did so far, the installment of the panels, mainly at the timing of opening a new outlet, we made the investment plan including the panels, and mainly by FIT we had installed the panels, but FIT system is under review, and plus at the timing that we shifted to self-consumption, we are now in need of a scheme to deploy panels on the existing outlets, and we are announcing this idea. So a PPA model is to be introduced. A third-party generator would have the ownership of the panels, and on our rooftop, our energy can be purchased and consumed. That is what we are doing. So we purchase from a third party. The advantage is, as has been mentioned, in addition to new stores, the key is what to do on our existing stores, how to introduce these schemes into our existing outlets. So this is a new approach of our investment planning. How speedily can we install these schemes into our existing stores, and at the moment we have decided that the PPA model would be the best option, and we are making our largest effort here. This is the scheme diagram. One of the key points is the traditional power tariff, and at the same level, renewable is now available. So that means cost is lower. So by this kind of agreement, and including the terms, years of the contract, we are negotiating our agreement so that there will be the maximum benefit. Already in fiscal 2019, we have started the scheme for some of our facilities. This is Konan City, Shiga Prefecture, Ion Town, Konan. You can't see in this picture, but we have the PPA. As of September last year, we have opened Ion Mall Fuji Idera in Osaka. Already the PPA scheme is utilized and panels are being installed. We are increasing the PPA within the Ion Group. Already at more than 200 stores, there are candidates to apply PPA. We are speedily applying PPAs to our stores. So I showed the gap between our actual installment and the plan. And we are gradually closing the gaps. I mean, sort of gradually. Still, we do not reach our plan. So in addition to that, I spoke about the on-site effort. And then in other places, how much we can deploy renewable. We are studying the best methods. One of the possibility is the FIT power generation from residentials. When they have graduated from FIT, could the residentials please sell those surplus power to ourselves is what we are starting to work on. So post FIT at residentials and the surplus powers by payment of cash and by using our WA-ON point will be paid as consideration. The customers can use these WA-ON points to shop at our stores. We are working across the stores in Japan. Our clients are very fond of this plan within the Chubu Electric jurisdiction. I think about more than 20% of the customers select our service plan according to Chubu Electric. I personally talk with shareholders and other stakeholders. They tell me that they would like to opt for such a scheme if that is available. So in this way, we wish to expand our communication with our customers as well. We are talking with many utilities to purchase these FIT graduated residential powers. My last slide. At the same time, in addition to RE100, we are also participant of EV100. At all the Ion malls across Japan, EV chargers are to be installed. This is our goal, to have the EV chargers in all our malls. Using EV, could renewables be procured? We have tested this in 2019. To put it simply, at the customer's house, whose rooftop does have a panel, and the EV would be charged by the solar panel. And when that customer comes with that EV to our store, and the surplus power will be supplied to our store, and we exchange by WA-ON points. The customers will earn WA-ON points that they can use to shop at our stores. We are going through a demonstration test verification of the scheme. So going forward, using these schemes and technologies and with more communication with our shopping customers, decentralized, locally produced energy we are trying to collect and use at our retail stores. At the same time, within the retail stores, there are lots of equipments. So to connect as one single network so that it would be more efficient in terms of our retail store operation is another part of our goal. Finally, in terms of renewable procurement, mainly it is on-site effort. To what extent solar panels can be installed on-site, plus the surplus powers of residential solars who are our shopping customers, how we can procure. No matter how much we procure, as I mentioned, the 10% renewable is a very far away goal. We do not even reach 5% of all the power we need. How to reach 10%? We have to work with all the supply chains, for example, large-scale generation projects or off-site large-scale generators, and how to procure renewables from such large-scale projects is what we have to think about. So at this moment, we will have to establish the policies for such future activities. Together with all the stakeholders in and outside of our country, listening to your advices and suggestions, we will strive to achieve our target. Please do contact us if you have any suggestions or business opportunities. Thank you for your very kind attention. Thank you very much, Mr. Suzuki.
国内の事例の2つ目。
The second case from the domestic market from Marui in 2030, 10 years from now, they are aiming at RE100 or Renewable Energy 100. They are very aggressive in their program. We have Ms. Nao Murakami in charge of sustainability at Marui Group. My name is Murakami. I'm in charge of sustainability group at Marui Group. Thank you very much for a very valuable opportunity today. Now, what we do at Marui, we're still midway towards our goal, but we hope to be able to be helpful in terms of providing information to you. I'm sure that you're quite tired by now, but there's going to be 2 more presentations in this session, so please just relax and listen to my talk. First, I'd like to give a brief introduction of the group, Marui. The company was founded in 1931. The size is much smaller than Unilever, but we're 89 years old. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 90th anniversary. We started from installment sales of furniture. That was how the business started in 1931. Now, today's business content, well, retail business and fintech credit business are the main core businesses that we do. And for those 2 businesses, they are essential to each other. So we have a packaged business model that is quite unique to Marui. Our retail business, some of you may have visited our store, Marui in Modi. There is a total of 25 stores centering around the Kanto region. We have about 200 million customers visiting our branches or stores. On the fintech side, EPOS cards are issued. We have 7 million card members. Next, our financial results. Until the collapse of the bubble economy up to 1991, Marui focused on fashion. People used to spend a lot of money on clothing. So we continued to grow up until then. But after the collapse of the bubble economy, people started to spend money on clothing, bags, or shoes, even after taking out credit. So we started to stagnate in terms of our business results. And then we had the Lehman crisis. And there was also a revision of the money lending business law. There were 2 periods where we recorded losses, but after that, we started to gradually shift our business model. For example, retail business. In the past, we were purchasing the goods, but we started to lease the floor space to tenants, and the composition of the store started to shift from fashion to restaurants and cafes, where there's more appeal to customers, and we're seeing an increase in visitors. Now, fintech business, cash advance revenue was very high in the past, but now when people shop, they can go into a convenience store, a supermarket. We ask them to use EPOS card, and gold card strategy has also been followed. So our performance has improved, so that EPS last year was a record high at 116 yen. Co-creation activities. We think of this as the foundation of all our businesses. In all business processes, we want to integrate customers' viewpoints and our suppliers and the local partners. We want to work with all of the stakeholders to try to create a new value together. That is what we call co-creation. Now, the grandfather of Mr. Aoi, the CEO, the founder is Chuji Aoi. When he started the installment sales of furniture business, installment is that we hand over the goods first and collect money afterwards. So we have to monitor credit. So to those customers, we give credit, but the founder thought that credit is something that we create together with the customers. When people have difficulty repaying, the amount of installment payment could be reduced by talking to us to make sure that they can continue to pay regularly. So we hear that the founder was very sensitive to the needs of the customers. So our services, we get the feedback from customers through customer feedback sessions. So from here on, I'd like to talk about the background against which Marui Group started to work on the environmental issues. Last year, we developed a vision for 2050 on a full-fledged fashion, co-creation sustainability activity. In order to it to be implemented, we thought that the vision is essential. This is what the vision is. Through business, we will overcome all kinds of dichotomies in the world. Today, in this world, we have dichotomies, men, women, adults, and children. We tend to divide things into 2 groups. Healthy people, disabled people, wealthy, poor. By dividing the population, there's discrimination, there's disparity being created. But even if half of the group becomes happy, that would not translate into well-being of the entire society as a whole. That is what Marui Group thinks. We want to create an inclusive and rich society where everybody can feel happy. In order to create such a future, we have this vision, and we have established these 3 businesses based on co-creation. In the business of connecting different generations, we position this green business that I'm talking about today. Now, in setting this vision, we noticed something very important. In the past, we tended to think as stakeholders, our customers, investors, and suppliers. We wanted to be useful to these stakeholders, but that's not all. There's another group of stakeholders, which is the future generation. We decided that future generation must be added through business, sustainable society, sustainable environment must be realized. to do so, we have to work with the future generation. That is what we considered. In particular, when it comes to environmental issues, we may have been able to manage things just thinking about our generation, but when you think about the future generations, we feel that there is urgency here. That's our ethical obligation for the current generation. That is what we think. So for these future generations, in order to create sustainable value, green business is positioned in our group. Now from here on, I'd like to talk about the initiatives of Marui Group in this green business. As you might know, climate change, the actions being taken by the future generations are getting stronger. We adults must be serious in listening to their voices. Recently, COP meeting was held, and temperature increases should be contained at 1.5 degrees, not 2 degrees. There's more momentum being built. And at Marui Group, to respond to the demands of the future generations, we want to aim at containing the temperature increases to 1.5. So, science-based target has been revised from 2 degrees to 1.5 degrees in September of last year, and we were recertified as SBT, and by 2030, compared to 2017, Scope 1, 2 will be reduced by 80%, Scope 3 will be reduced by 35%. That's our target. And by 2050, Scope 1, 2 will be reduced by 90%. That's our target. 1.5 degrees certification. There's only 3 companies who were certified at 1.5 degrees based on SBT. Now at Marui, let me talk about the background of our initiatives on energy. Retail business consumes a lot of energy, electricity. We have lighting, air conditioning, and refrigerators. This is double the amount of electricity being used per unit of floor space. Cost on environmental burden, the largest component is electricity. 80% comes from electricity. 3 billion is the amount of cost being incurred. On the other hand, as I said earlier, people who are buying clothing is coming down. People are spending more time at cafes and restaurants. There's an increasing demand for such spaces, which means that we will need refrigerators costing more electricity bills. So the amount of energy to be used is increasing, not decreasing. So we thought this electricity should be free of CO2. We decided to switch to renewable energy. In 2030, we are aiming at 100% renewable energy. So we participated in and signed on to RE100 in July of 2018. And new electricity utility entrants, we partner with them, starting with Marui head store, Ueno Marui. All in all, 8 stores have switched to renewable energy 100%. Not just switching over to renewable energy. At our own branches, we have 7 million EPOS card members. We want them to also adopt renewable energy too. Pay for their electricity bills through EPOS card. We want to expand the social impact as well as to have more viability in our business. In December of 2018, new retailer Minna, we invested in Minna Dendok, and to our EPOS card members, we give them sustainable options. So we are working on this in partnership with Minna Dendok. For example, we organize events at our store. Regional power and regional products will be sold at the same time. Or if people pay electricity bills with EPOS card, they would get some benefits or rewards. So people find it easier to be switched to gold card if they pay with EPOS card, and we want to further promote these initiatives. And EPOS card members, we interviewed them, we asked them, and 2/3 of them are interested in switching over to these new electricity players. So this will bring benefits not only to the environment, but our business as well as our customers, which would lead to our main core business. And we want to further push these types of initiatives. Now, towards renewable energy 100%, this is the roadmap. As at the end of last year, we just started on this work. So it was only 1%, the switchover rate. But 23% is to be reached by the end of this fiscal year. And at the end of 2020, we are working towards 50% renewable energy with various utilities. We are working on various co-creation initiatives. By the fall of 2019, Marui Group Company, Marui Facilities, is a group company. They are working on waste as well as electricity. This is the company that administers various facilities. And to retail, they were registered as an electricity retailer. So new electricity players, we will buy from them as well as depending on regions, we will be able to directly procure electricity to make a contribution to this effort. Now, we also signed up to TCFD. So in the financial report, financial impact information is being disclosed. As for risk, climate change scenario will be used to expect future cost increases. So 800 million is the cost increases through renewable energy adoption, and 2.2 billion is the amount of cost increases through carbon taxes. As for opportunities, towards EPOS card members, we are urging them to switch over to renewable energy. So there's going to be profits to fintech business, as well as tax exemption from carbon tax, as well as cost reductions would lead to 4.2 billion. As I said earlier, our environmental initiatives would give us more business opportunities than risks. So we consider this as green business. The benefits are larger than risk. For opportunities and risks, we would like to continue to make disclosures as different trends emerge. Now, lastly, these are some of the achievements of our ESG work. Let me just refer to some of them. At Marui Group, other than the environment, we are focusing on S and G from 2014. At Marui, our share price in 2013, March end, if that is indexed at 100, March end 2018, over 5 years, it's grown by 2.5 times, which is higher than the growth of topics, the index. And the share price growth was above EPS by 50 points. So I talked about our switch in a business model. Stable EPS increases is now possible in our revenue structure. So share price and EPS, the differential is other than profit increases. This is how we are being given credit to our ESG work by the market. So ESG weighting is going to be greater going forward. So co-creation, sustainability-based management is something that we would like to further promote and evolve. Lastly, this vision cannot be achieved by us working on our own, alone. We want to work with you. Let's co-create together to work on these initiatives. Thank you very much for your attention.
村上様、ありがとうございます。
Thank you, Ms. Murakami. So far, we have heard about the sustainable business pursuit using renewable energies. But this is not just limited to major companies, and we will now hear from the Oka Printing Company. And using renewable energies, they are pursuing sustainable printing business. We will have Mr. Tetsuo Oka, CEO of Oka Printing, to speak. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Okawa of Oka Printing. Today, we have received presentation of major companies, and now you're hearing from a company with employees of only 40 people. Thank you so much for this opportunity given to my company. With respect to what I'm going to present, I'm going to give you the perspective of SMEs, and there is a reason why we are shifting to renewable energies. How it was done will also be discussed. Also, collaboration with other prefectures will also be covered according to the request of the organizer. And as a SME model, it is important for a company-wide effort to be made comprising all employees, and the initiatives as well as the overall achievement will be discussed. I would like to first of all talk about why we have been focused on renewable energies even though we were SME. Going back, when I was in first year of university student, I lost my father, died, and my mother became the fifth generation president. I am the sixth. At that time, as an SME, I came back to the company, and that is when the economic bubble burst and revenues went down by 40%, 50%. That is the reason why we have become focused on environmental impact. Now, our company was established in 1881. So we are 138 years old. This is the 139th year. I am the sixth generation CEO. Kyoken Shumai is where we are providing the wrapping paper for. This is Patagonia, the outdoor wear manufacturer. And we are providing support in printing for the Japanese operations. I'm sure you are all experts in this area. But I'd like to point out that in the context of COP25, it was not fully covered by the media. A greenhouse gas reduction is already a matter of course, and we have to go beyond that. In the case of Japan, we have experienced last year abnormal weather events. Typhoon number 15, number 19 have was an event where many people lost their lives, or people lost their homes as a result of these disasters. Against this backdrop, SMEs must also pursue sustainable business development. That means that we have to be more focused about the environment, not just focus on the economics. So this is the type of disasters we've beset with almost every year in Japan. We don't know when earthquakes will begin. We are living in an earthquake-prone country, and also typhoons are hitting every year. And in fact, it is increasingly become more significant. That is what we have to deal with. On the part of Yokohama City, they have come up with a carbon neutral objective, and by the latter half of the century, carbon neutral or zero carbon will be pursued. And in utilizing J-credit of the company for the water as well as electricity as well as a vehicle, about 180 to 190 tons of carbon will be reduced to zero, and after that we will be receiving orders from the company, from customers. That is what we have been implementing. How can we pursue this? First and foremost, management will be necessary. Since we are SMEs, it is necessary to share the sense of crisis. We have to solicit the support of our employees. So we have to have a sense of ownership for the issue, and that is how we have been engaged in action. It is also necessary to collaborate with various stakeholders in 2018. The 2-degree target for SMEs, as well as the RE100 certified project of the Ministry of Environment selected our case as a project. We have received support, therefore, with the central government as well as municipal governments, NPOs, and with other organizations. We're working in close collaboration to promote renewable energy. Let me talk about the characteristics of what we are doing. Because we are SMEs, because we are a small company, there are things that we can do. We can bring to bear our strength in that regard. CSR divisions as well as sustainability division will not be responsible in our case. All the employees must have a sense of ownership toward the SDG programs. So a company-wide effort is made to formulate the management plan. That is the style we have been pursuing. So for about 90 minutes, 4 workshops have been held for this purpose. We have identified the challenges that we have to tackle. It was a bottom-up effort from the employees for the 17 goals of the SDGs. How it can be reflected accordingly will be made in terms of our classifications, and prioritization was also made in pursuing these goals. As a result of this, so it's cross-divisional efforts, and without a classification based on gender or ranks, we have set up teams. There could be zero-emission project or SDG projects included as well. And to have a goal of renewable energy 100% plant has emerged from this effort. Now, it took about 1 year to pursue this with the Yokohama City as well as the Yokohama City, the global warming organization worked together to install this solar energies, which was investment free. Now, in terms of installment as well as construction of the solar panels was made, and we will use the energy generated to operate the printing plant. And we will be purchasing the power from the company that provided power generation. We are going to continue this scheme for 17 years. As I have already mentioned today, the solar power generation is around 20%. And the remaining 80% will be from biomass power. In April of last year, we started to use biomass power, and by so doing, we have been able to realize 1% renewable energies. This is also a new initiative. Yokohama City is aiming for zero carbon. But Yokohama City is a major, large city, and renewable energies has to be pursued in that context. The Tohoku 12 municipalities will be working together with Yokohama, and in Tohoku, the renewable energy such as wind power generation will be generated, and the excess portion can be utilized by Yokohama City or the companies in Yokohama. This is Aomori Prefecture, Yokohama City. It has the same city name as in Yokohama City of Yokohama, and we have now utilizing their power generated by wind power, and it is using blockchain technology or mechanism. The Aomori Prefecture power generated by wind power, the 80% thereof will be utilized by our company. So this kind of regional collaboration is leading to the generation of new businesses. On the part of Aomori Prefecture, the scallops and sea cucumber is very famous, and Yokohama is very famous for the Chinatown. And these food products could be provided by way of collaboration. This kind of communication has emerged. Utilizing renewable energies in addition to such collaboration, providing support for each other's economy has also been realized. From here onward, I would like to talk about the zero carbon printing in the context of the usage of renewable energies. Using J credit, zero has been achieved, and based on that, orders will be received from our customers according to this scheme. On the part of the customers, the scope 3, or indirect emissions, or the printing service, when there are multiple number of companies, the scope 3 emission is to be reduced. And by selecting a company, benefit can be provided. That is the nature of the proposal. What is important here is that it is not just a pose. It's not that will not be sustainable. So it has to have substance. In terms of this mechanism for each region, as well as amongst the people, there has to be exchange. Shimokawa City of Hokkaido could receive investment. The J credit will be purchased by our company so that it will be part of our zero initiatives. Shimokawa City of Hokkaido and Totsuka, Kawakami Town, has a sister city relationship. And Shimokawa has wheat, and Yokohama's pear could be used for producing craft beer, and we will be providing the label for that. So in this way, a win-win relationship can be pursued in this scheme. Furthermore, we want to reduce the usage of oil as well. So oil-based solvents are not used for 94% of our printed products. And in terms of paper from FSC certified forests, is accounting for 62% of our usage today. 2 years ago, in the second Japan SDG Awards, in the SDGs Partnership Award was presented to our company from Prime Minister Abe. On the other hand, this effort has to be focused on the global environment as well as people. It is also related to animals and plants as well. But on the part of SMEs, what we are focused on the most is our employees, first and foremost. So we are not using oil solvents anymore. By so doing, we have been able to make our employees happy because it's a better environment for them to work in, with better atmosphere can be provided. This is one of our employees. For 7 years, she had been working as a part-timer, and then upon a request, she became a full-time employee. And 2 months later, she became a leader for the SDG program. How is this motivation generated? She said that she has two children. And she said that in the future of 2030 and 2050, we want to provide an environment where children are not unhappy or difficult to live in. And that is the driving force behind my actions, according to her comments. And now she is receiving many requests for me to speak. I'm very happy to have such an employee. Now, inclusive of the SDG initiatives, we are conducting a SDG report session once a year. The objective as well as results are shared in this public forum. This was held last year in February, and 140 people came from government as well as private sector companies, even when they don't have any business with us. In May 2019, we were invited by the UN. And we took part at the UN SDGs Global Festival of Action, which was held in Bonn of Germany. And I had the pleasure of making a presentation. There were 5 participants. And the three people on the right are all representatives of SMEs. So SMEs pursuing SDGs as well as pursuing renewable energies was received very well. Furthermore, the former U.S. Vice President Al Gore is pursuing a climate reality project. It is to nurture leaders in this field. Program was held in Tokyo for 2 days, and in April of last year, I was Junko Edohiro. She translated the Inconvenient Truth, and she asked me to participate. So, former U.S. Vice President asked her which printing company is the most appropriate in terms of sustainable development. And when the invitation came, I accepted very happily. It was very difficult to speak in English, but we were able to print 2 versions in Japanese and English for former U.S. Vice President Gore's speech. And students that were very inspired by Greta has also started a demonstration march. And Miyazaki-san is the organizer for this. She was also picked up at the Greta's special broadcast by NHK. Now, this she will become an employee of our company now. So there have been good interaction overall. This is the 2030 goals for the company. For the SMEs, we have to think about the advantages and the benefit that we can enjoy. There is no doubt that this is leading to market opportunities for SMEs as well. It will lead to new customer acquisition for 2018 and 2019. If we compare the levels in terms of revenues, we have seen a 6% increase in revenues. And in terms of recurring profit, there is a difference of 1%. In our industry, people are talking about the no longer need for printing, and digitalization is more important, and paperless is being called for. So we have been subject to a very severe price competition. But nevertheless, we have been able to increase the recurring profit, ordinary profit, by 1%. So I believe that the environment is changing. Now, going forward, on the part of the government as well as companies, must become more resilient. That is of utmost importance. We have to become a resilient company. This is important for SMEs as well. It is because the Nippon Keiranen is promoting the SDGs. They have made this declaration, and various requests are being put forth to SMEs as a result of those initiatives. Upon disasters, what we can do is also very important on our part. Last year, there was a problem in terms of electricity. It disabled our machines, PCs, as well as other machines failed. But we have the solar panels for self-generation. And that is the reason why we were able to maintain our business and operations. This is also an important matter to consider on the part of our business. This is our goal for 2020. 180 to 190 tons are being emitted in Scope 1, 2. Compared to Scope 3, it's very small, because our Scope 3 is paper, ink, and other CO2 emissions in manufacturing. Is around 1,900 tons overall. Inclusive of that, we want to pursue zero carbon. This is a very ambitious goal that we are pursuing for 2030. And last year, in December, our partner company, such as the paper companies, as well as the ink manufacturers, as well as and other processing companies, have conducted seminars on climate change, and we shared our intentions of achieving zero carbon. and the possible carbon zero initiatives was shared in terms of information. We are pursuing world peace. That is the direction we have to pursue. But you might think that SMEs cannot achieve world peace, and I agree with that. But what we are considering is that one by one, company by company, even if the initiative is small, we can do what we can toward world peace. 99.7% of the companies in Japan are considered to be SMEs. Globally, I think the ratio is about the same. Therefore, against this backdrop, we have to have high aspirations and take action in a steadfast manner so that renewable energies can become sustainable going forward. We alone will not suffice. We have to work with the whole industry, both domestic as well as globally. These initiatives must be increased. That is the challenge besetting us today. I would like to ask for your continued support and advice. With that, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okawa.
次のセッションは市場及び政策に
Thank you very much. Next is about the market policy updates. Experts will be talking to us. From Bloomberg NEF, Mr. Ishu Kikuma. Bloomberg NEF. Bloomberg data was referred to for several times already. They analyze and research the energy situation across the world, very well known for their high level of cost analysis. Kikuma-san.
こんにちは。
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. I am an analyst of Japanese energy market. My name is Ishu Kikuma. Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, briefly about the Bloomberg NEF. Within Bloomberg, this is the branch researching energy. We have 17 offices across the world with 250 staffs. BNF coverage, decarbonization, and we are looking at different sectors. Energy transition includes clean energy, next generation, advanced transportation or building industry. These are the areas that we cover. And in addition, this year we have started working on a new sector, agriculture or commodities. New technology, including hydrogen, is within our coverage. Basically, there are three topics I will talk about. First is about the cost of electricity and energy mix. Number two, corporate clean energy procurement and options in Japan, global trends in the world. First, the cost of generation and the energy mix. Across the world, solar and the wind installations are expanding rapidly. Up until 2018, cumulative gigawatt is above 1 terawatt. Going forward, this rising trend is expected to continue. As the reason why this has expanded in this way, that is partly due to technological innovation plus the cost declining because of the technology innovation. The three graphs from the left is the solar module price, onshore wind turbine price, and lithium-ion battery prices from around 2008 through 2018. This shows the prices for all of the technology. Whichever you look at, you can see that the cost is dropping. And because of that, on an annual basis, the production capacity is also rising significantly. According to this map, as of 2014, this indicates which technology was the cheapest in different markets. As of 2014, the black, coal thermal, or the gray, which is the CCGT. In many of the markets, these were the cheapest technologies. But as of 2019, there was a major change. The blue, onshore wind, or yellow, which are the solar PVs, these technologies became the cheapest technology in the countries including 2/3 of the world population. 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 2/3 of the world popul However, in the case of Japan, the cost is stuck at a very high level. According to this chart, this looks at the levelized cost of electricity by country. On the right-hand side, the right you go, it is expensive. The arrow indicates Japan. Compared to other countries, you can see that Japan's price is at a high level. There are few reasons. In Japan, we have few flat land. That land development is expensive. However, there was the FIT and transition to auction, and the solar cost is gradually declining in Japan. This chart indicates the levelized bid prices in PV auctions. The horizontal shows not the year of the auction, it is the start of operation year. In Japan, the first auction, it took place and the price is going down, and in the auction this month it was 11 yen per kilowatt hour or below 11 yen. Although the price in Japan is declining at the same time as this chart indicates compared to other countries, still the solar price in Japan is still high. This chart indicates the levelized cost of electricity for different technologies. And this looks at the newly established renewables versus the newly established fossil fuel. The yellow, the solar PV, or the blue onshore wind, these are still expensive compared to new fossil fuel generation, but going forward, by importing overseas produced modules, or if it is onshore wind by larger turbines, by generation efficiency improvement, the LCOE will go down. According to our analysis, from mid-2020s, the cost of new renewable should become cheaper than the existing fossil fuels, and if new facilities are to be established, we expect that renewable will become more economic and cheap, and therefore we expect that there will be more investment into renewables. In this graph, again, levelized cost of electricity is shown. The new renewable is compared to existing fossil fuel facilities, power generation. A few points. Number one, in the mid-2020s, the gray indicates the existing thermal power generation would be expensive than solar and wind, and therefore mid-2020s, existing fossil fuels will have to reduce their utilization ratio. Another point is the black line, which is existing coal thermal. In Japan, there is no carbon tax, so according to this system, up until 2050, the existing coal thermal remains the cheapest source of power generation. Based on this LCOE, according to Bloomberg, we have modeled using the cheapest technology. Then in Japan, 78% of the energy mix by 2050 should be 78% renewable. This is according to our model. As of 2050, solar and wind would be 32% each, according to the model. From the left, this shows the 2018 actual energy mix. In the middle is the government energy basic plan, the Japanese government goal as of 2030. On the right-hand side is Bloomberg's model-based energy mix as of 2030. The government basic plan goal and Bloomberg, if you compare, there are some differences. First, the black part, which is coal thermal. Bloomberg considers that 8 gigawatt worth of coal thermal under construction, if they start operation, then more than the government plan, we expect that the coal would account for a larger percent. The red is nuclear power generation. The restart would not expand, according to Bloomberg, as much as the government expects. And then the yellow is solar power generation. As of already, it is 6% already. according to Bloomberg, rather than the government forecast of 7%, Bloomberg expects that there will be more. As of 2030, we forecast that 13% will be solar. So as I mentioned, that the renewable cost is declining and that renewable will expand in terms of energy mix, I said, but that does not necessarily mean that the Japanese power consumers would have more options. That is because of legislation and other matters, and there must be changes in the law. So this is about procurement options here in Japan. In Japan, there are three major options to procure clean energy. Number one, on-site generation, self-consumption. Number two is to purchase from retailers by way of green tariff. And next is clean energy certificate purchases to give environmental value or attribute. I will talk about these three options. About self-consumption, in 2019, the FIT price for commercial solar was 10 yen per kilowatt, which was cheaper than the commercial electricity price. And because of that, rather than using FIT to sell, self-consumption was more economical than FIT. Bloomberg quantified this trend. The blue indicates the years required for payback, and the purple shows the internal rate of return, IRR, from the left. Self-consumption in the middle is selling the surplus at FIT. On the right-hand side is sell all of the power generated by FIT. So on the right-hand side, IRR is about 3%, and the payback period requires 15 years, but self-consumption, IRR, 8%, and the payback years is around 10 years. So this indicates that it is more economically favorable to self-consume. Under FIT, environmental attribute cannot be won, and that's another reason why self-consumption seems to be favorable. The second option is a green tariff to purchase clean, renewable energy from retailers. A TEPCO Energy partner, Shikoku Electric, they already sell renewable power packages. However, these are still expensive than other traditional energy, and according to Kansai Electric, per kilowatt hour, it is a premium of 2 yen. It is 2 yen expensive per unit. The third option is buying certificates. In Japan, there are three main certificates. Number one, green energy certificate. Second, J credit. Third, non-fossil certificate. The non-fossil certificate, this chart indicates the auctions so far. The fifth auction, up until the fifth auction, the volume of trading, it did not really increase, but the auction 6 and 7, the trading volume went over 100 gigawatt. The reason is because of increase of RE100 companies. The purple indicates the number of Japanese companies that had joined RE100. The latest auction, which was the 7th, at that time there were 26 Japanese companies in RE100. Already it is 30 Japanese companies in RE100. And the fifth auction, from the fifth auction, non-fossil certificate became usable to count for RE100, which means that there were more consumers who wished to purchase a non-fossil certificate. I spoke about these three options. On-site generation self-consumption, it was most economically favorable. And to purchase clean energy or using certificates, you pay some money, but these were the most accessible, easy to use procurement method. However, there are some points. Number one, self-consumption is not sufficient. This chart shows about a certain building, and the reverse power flow must be avoided. And if solar is self-consumed, this is the modeling the pattern of self-consumption. That the building energy demand 5 to 20% only 5 or 20% could be supplied, which means the remaining 80 or 95%, in order to close that gap, certificate that we purchased, or they had to purchase clean energy by paying green tariff. Self-consumption was not sufficient to fill the demand, which means the role of the retailers. In Japan, when consumers wish to use clean energy or buy certificates, they cannot directly purchase, and the intermediary would be the retailers. Going forward, if the demand rises, it means that the role of the retailers will be even larger in Japan. In order to realize a corporate PPA in Japan, I have a few points. Number one, there is the cost barrier. As was mentioned at the beginning, renewable is expensive here in Japan. On top of that, in the case of corporate PPA, imbalance charges will have to be paid, and therefore the imbalance charges, and considering they're already expensive, renewable, a corporate PPA project itself would not be economic or viable. The legislation is not transparent. In Japan, there is no legal framework for corporate PPA, and therefore for the developers or for the power consumers, it is very uncertain, unclear how to implement a corporate PPA. As for the generators, there are regulations that are expected, and for some of the power generators, in order to enter the market, some are still waiting to see the clarity of the expected regulations, and finally the difficulty of forecasting a generation. So far, by FIT, all of the power generated was sold, so the forecasting was not important, or matching of the forecast and actual was not that important. But going forward, if corporate PPA is going to be implemented, imbalance charges will have to be paid, which means there must be better forecasting. So these technologies that were not used so far will have to be deployed going forward. Those technologies all have to be improved, their time will be required. So these are some of the barriers that I consider to implement corporate PPA in Japan. Lastly, the global trend of the corporate procurement of renewables. Across the world, a large number of companies are procuring a large amount of renewables, including Google 6 giga, Facebook almost 5 giga, including wind and solar. They have a huge contract of renewables. This chart indicates the demand of renewables required by RE100 companies. The red real line shows the electricity that the RE100 companies will need in terms of clean energy, and the bar chart with colors indicate the certificates or corporate PPA used by the RE100 companies, and the blank bars are the gap that the RE100 companies will still need. According to Bloomberg, by 2030, the total clean energy demand by the RE100 companies will be 210 terawatt hour. And this shows how the RE100 companies are procuring their clean energy. The purple indicates certificates. Many businesses use certificates, but you can see corporate PPA using wind, which is the large blue circle. About the corporate PPA, at Bloomberg, we study the annual contract level. We track the annual deal, and according to the latest analysis, in 2019 it was 19.5 gigawatt that was contracted. In Europe, 90% have been contracted. However, in Asia, the deal is very low level. In Asia, the reason why the trading level is low is because lack of option. This table indicates Asia markets. What the options of buying clean energy is available. In many of the countries, off-site PPA or corporate PPA is not available, or there are some markets without RECs. This map indicates the number of suppliers and the revenue total where they are sensitive to purchase clean energies, like RE100, and Japan is number 2 following the USA. The total revenue is 80 trillion yen, and therefore there must be sufficient number of suppliers who can use clean energy. My last slide, RE100 companies, or who are very sensitive to climate, and these are the top 10 companies. The revenue is indicated, and if RE100 companies should make a request about specification of clean energy, there is a possibility that RE100 company will switch their suppliers. So this is looking at the risk of how much revenue opportunity might be lost. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
熊様、
Thank you very much, Mr. Kikuma.
続きまして東京都環境局の
Moving on, Ms. Naomi Okamoto from the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Environmental Bureau. Both for residential and offices, they are trying to make it easier for people to introduce renewable energy. Such policies are being pursued by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Handing over to you, Ms. Okamoto. Good afternoon. My name is Naomi Okamoto from the Environmental Bureau of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, TMG. At last year's RE users meeting, I was in the audience listening to presentations. It's not just global companies, but Japanese companies who are working very hard, concretely, to realize RE100. And I remember I was very impressed last year. Now today, I'm here as one of the speakers to be given an opportunity to present on behalf of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government. This is a great honor for me. Now, over the past 1 year at TMG, we have made a declaration that we will realize zero-emission Tokyo by 2050, and we announced our roadmap at the end of last year. So I'd like to give you some updates. Now, the content of my presentation can be broadly divided into 2 parts. Number 1 is about zero-emission Tokyo strategy, and number 2 is concrete initiatives in that strategy. Today, because this is a renewable energy meeting, I would like to focus on initiatives on renewable energy. Now, the first part. Last year in May, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government made a contribution to realize zero-emission Tokyo, to reach zero emission. Well, this is to migrate to a social system that is consistent with 1.5 degrees target. And we believe this is a responsibility of a large city like Tokyo to make a contribution. It's not that we just make a contribution to reduce CO2 within the prefecture, but even outside of the prefecture. Now, this is an ambitious target for Tokyo. And we believe that this is going to lead to further growth as a city ourselves. Now, at the year end, we put together our roadmap, which is called Zero Emission Tokyo Strategy. And at the same time, we also made a declaration of climate action mobilization in order to address the issue of climate change. In addition to appealing a sense of urgency, we thought that it is very important to take a concrete action. We are strongly cognizant of this climate crisis that we're facing. We want to implement effective measures, and we also would like to call upon the citizens and companies to resonate with us so that we can take action together. On this slide, we are talking about 3 perspectives of the zero-emission Tokyo strategy. Number 1, it's not just mitigation measures, But adaptation measures would also need to be deployed. It's a comprehensive initiative. The impact of climate change is already being felt in our daily lives. So energy efficiency and renewable energy adoption, these mitigation measures must be deployed, but at the same time, we need to promote adaptation measures of climate change. Number 2, recycling, including plastics. This is positioned as part of climate change countermeasures to make a contribution to CO2 reduction even outside of the prefecture as well. Number 3, we would like to accelerate our initiatives in all areas. Some representative ones are shown on the screen. Put together, there are 6 areas. 14 initiatives are included in Zero Emission Tokyo Strategy. Number 1 is renewable energy to be mainstreamed into core energy. So I'd like to talk about that later on in more detail. This slide shows the 3 points in our roadmap. Number 1, we have a target for 2050. In addition, the next 10 years, what we do in the next 10 years, that is by 2030, we believe that what we do in the next 10 years is extremely important. So we also have concrete targets for 2030 in this strategy. Number 2, in addition to existing technology, we also would like to utilize advanced technology so that we can accelerate initiatives over and above 2030. So we call this 2030 Targets Plus Action. Number 3, this strategy for us, we are aiming at zero emission by 2050, and this strategy is considered as our starting point for our decarbonization. So we have the vision for the future, and in conjunction with the changes in the structure of the society, we would like to update and make some changes to our targets and initiatives. Slide number 2. This is the slide is about renewable energy transformed into our core energy. This is our initiative number 1. This is our vision for 2050 on the left. This is 100% decarbonization of the energy use. To do so, renewable energy must be penetrated, and also in other areas like heat energy, we also need to decarbonize other energies, including heat energy. In the middle of the page, talks about major targets towards 2030, the next 10 years. Renewable power will be expanded, which is existing technology. We also have the target of 100% renewable energy to be used in the TMG facilities. To the right of the slide, we have 2030 Targets Plus Action. I'll cover this later on. From here on, I'd like to talk about some concrete measures. Our measures to expand use of renewable energy. There are 3 parts. First, zero emission offices. Offices, including buildings, and then residences, and then the action to be taken at TMG facilities. Those are the 3 that I'll cover. But before I cover them, I'd like to give you the split of GHG emissions in Tokyo. Look at the pie chart in the left, on the left. The major feature about Tokyo is that we have offices, which is represented in green, and the residential part in pink. They have a very large share of GHG emissions. And because of that, please look at the right. What we should be aiming at in 2050 is that we will have zero emission offices and zero emission homes in the residential segment. That should be the standard in 2050. In order to induce that to happen, we believe that we need to take the lead at TMG facilities. From here on, I'd like to talk about measures at buildings and offices. In 2050, zero-emission offices should be the standard. That's our vision. To do so, we need to promote further energy-saving measures, and renewable energy facilities should be installed on site as much as possible, and the remaining energy load should be covered by utilization of renewable energy. So to do so from 2020, in the Tokyo ordinance, there is going to be the 3 systems with respect to buildings, and with this, energy efficiency, energy facilities to be installed on site, and use of renewable energy will be promoted. For new buildings, we have the building plan system for new buildings. Energy efficiency and renewable facility will be assessed in the system called Zero Energy Building System. Additionally, for use of renewable energy, there is going to be an obligation to consider utilization of renewable energy. Now, in the middle, we have existing large offices. Cap and trade system requires CO2 reduction from 2020 to 2024. The obligatory reduction rate is going to be 27% on average, and we will give larger credit to reductions through renewable energy to promote further use of renewable energy. Now, the bottom is mid-sized offices. We are implementing global warming reporting system. We have a system of announcing and disclosing good companies that have good energy efficiency and renewable energy usage measures, and we will also start a reporting requirement for utilization of renewable energy, as well as installation of renewable energy facilities. Let me start with the left-hand pie chart. This is the usage of power at offices that are applied cap and trade system. About 1,200 offices account for 23% of all power use in the metropolitan area. You can understand that it's very important to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency at large offices. Please look at the graph on the right-hand side. We conducted a survey of large offices. We asked whether they are interested in installing renewable energy facilities or buying renewable energy power. Some have answered that they have already started working on that, or some have said that they are interested in collecting information. As much as 80% of the offices said that they are interested in installing renewable energy equipment or introducing renewable energy. Now, we also asked what measures they are taking to increase use of renewable energies. They said that they are looking at what measures would be the best. So they are interested, but they're still looking at possible ways to use renewable energy. So there's still a gap. So we want to fill this gap as much as possible so that more and more offices will use renewable energy. Now, one of the measures to fill this gap would be what we did last year in June. Companies who declared RE100, as well as retailers who are selling renewable energy power, we conducted a Renewable Energy 100 action meeting with them. And in March, we are planning to organize a matching session where offices and retailers, power retailers, would be able to have a meeting towards wider use of renewable energy. Some people from the office side said that even if they wanted to buy renewable energy power, there's not enough amount available. So we're asking power retailers to create new renewable energy power sources, to expand the available menus, and to conduct more public relations effort. And the retailers were surveyed, and more than half of them said that they will implement these suggestions, which is quite encouraging. From here on, I would like to talk about some of the measures covering the residential segment. Similar to offices, by 2050, we want to have zero-emission homes as the standard. We need to promote further energy efficiency as well as renewable energy generation equipment to be installed on site, and the remaining energy load should be covered by further use of renewable energy. We will be comprehensive in promoting these measures. For example, for homes, energy efficiency and higher insulation performance should be encouraged, and for home appliances, energy-saving appliances should be promoted in our measures. And for renewable energy use, we would like to induce more installation of renewable energy generation equipment as well as further use of renewable energy, which I would like to cover in the following slides. First, equipment installation. At TMG, solar panels and other equipment installation. In addition to these, we are also providing support to battery storage so that renewable energy can be produced on site and consumed by themselves. Because last fall we had a number of typhoons hitting the metropolitan area, causing great damage. There was power outage over a long period, so we re-recognized the importance of having your own independent power source. So it's not just solar panels, but storage, battery storage should be encouraged to be installed so that in emergencies, people can be self-reliant for their power needs. This would lead to further self-consumption, which is going to lower the load on the grid. Solar panel is already receiving our support, and this year there's a supplementary budget of 4.2 billion yen for battery storage, which is to be used this fiscal year. Now, these are measures for utilization of renewable energy. Natural power with everyone together is the name of the project. What is great about this is that on the rooftop, even if you cannot place a solar panel, everybody will be able to use renewable energy by switching over your power contracts. At Tokyo Metropolitan Government, our model business is to solicit people who wish to come together to increase purchasing power so that renewable energy electricity can be used at a reasonable cost. There are such examples overseas, but this is going to be a first in Japan. So let me just explain to you what the flow is going to be. There are 4 steps. Number 1, people are to be registered, which can be done on the campaign website. The first round is already over, but we will plan to implement numerous campaigns. So enter into the site through this QR code to get registered. Next, the second step. At the campaign secretariat, through auctions, we would select the cheapest menu from a utility company that is offering the best deal, and we will show that to the registered people. And number 4, people who are registered would look at the quote to decide whether they would contract or not. So this is going to be the flow. We would like to take this kind of a business model forward, not only inside the Tokyo metropolitan area, but also working with other local authorities. Now, we would like to take the lead at our facilities. At TMG, we are in the position to promote these environmental measures, but we are also a large user consuming a lot of energy and resources. We need to show the model. We need to take the first step, we feel. So in order to work with others, we believe that we need to take the lead in taking action. And therefore, in our target for 2030, as shown on the title, we want to have 100% renewable energy in our energy use at our facilities. We have many facilities. Total energy use is about 900 million kilowatt hours, which is about 1% of power use within the prefecture. By promoting energy efficiency as well as renewable energy equipment installation on site. And as for the remaining energy demand, we want to switch over to renewable energy 100%. Now, as for concrete steps, we already have the rule to install solar power generation equipment when the building is to be rebuilt or remodeled. And when power contract is to be entered into through auctions, higher efficiency energy is to be procured. And from August of last year, we started TMG RE100 version. So power to be supplied to our main number 1 tower would be switched over to 100% renewable energy. Now from next year, this is going to be widened to other facilities and other buildings of TMG to promote renewable energy 100% policy. There are two things. There is power that have already graduated from the FIT system. This is to be proactively used at our facilities so that renewable energy can be produced locally and consumed locally. Number 2, as I said, we have a lot of energy use at TMG, so we would like to leverage this size so that the next step is going to be an energy contract that would lead to new renewable energy generation facility to be installed. Now, I talked about zero emission Tokyo strategy today, but at the same time, climate change adaptation plan, plastic reduction program, as well as zero emission vehicle program. We have developed such programs, so please take a look at these as well. Lastly, this is a request from TMG. We have this ambitious target of realizing zero emission Tokyo. This is not something that we, TMG, can do alone. We need to work with the citizens, corporations, and various bodies. We need the participation of all stakeholders. We want to work concretely with all parties involved. So we would like to ask for your understanding and cooperation. Thank you very much for your attention.
岡本様、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Ms. Okamoto. Next, we would like to move to the presentation by METI. Mr. Kiyoshi Hikino, Director of Electricity Infrastructure Division and Agency for Natural Resources and Energy. Mr. Hikino, please. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Hikino of the Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry. Today, I would like to talk about the direction of power policy toward dealing with the changes in the environment. That is sitting now, and new bills have been presented. In order to present the bills, we are now going into detailed consideration. I'd like to give you the up-to-date information on this topic. Basically, I will talk about two topics. The first is the next generation power network in the age of renewable energies becoming mainstream. And the second point I'd like to cover is a new market. I would like to talk about the non-fossil fuel value trading market. First of all, topic 1, the energy basic policy is the policy of the government. To the right, you can see the energy mix for 2030 from 22 to 24% is the ratio of the renewable energy target. And based on this target, we are implementing policies. And in terms of solar, wind, biomass, and geothermal initiatives are being considered. Let me talk about the power generation costs between Europe and Japan for 2010, 2016, and 2019 compared to Europe. In terms of solar power, the cost is higher by 2 times. And from 40 yen in 2010, you can see that cost is declining. Grid parity is being realized in the households already. If you look at the breakdown in terms of facilities as well as construction as well as operation and maintenance, you can see that there is a gap. What people can do in Europe should also be realized in Japan. That would be the challenge besetting us going forward. Now, in terms of the FIT system, in the past 10 years for renewable energies focus on solar, you can see that a significant introduction has been made. However, on the other hand, in terms of power cost, and the difference thereof is incurred by citizens in the form of a surcharge. This is to the tune of 2.4 trillion yen, and it's about 1% of the consumption tax. Now, in the basic policy of energy as well as in the energy mix, by 2030, the surcharge 3 trillion is the estimate that we have in the green area. You can see that in the past 5 years there's a steep slope. That means that the cost is very high. That is how it has been introduced. As I have already mentioned, solar cost is declining. Therefore, the gradient will become more gradual. But in terms of the budget, there is constraints. Therefore, low and high volume introduction of renewable energy will be the challenge that we are facing now. In terms of large volume introduction of renewable energies, there are challenges as well as directions. I will just like to highlight the major points in the interest of time. First of all, in terms of power generation, depending on the power source characteristics, the system will have to be established. Second, we need appropriate discipline. There are different power generators. FIT period is going to be 20 years, and after 20 years, the business to be closed is not what we are contemplating. We want this to become a 100-year industry, so that the facilities can be renovated, renewed, receiving support from the community. That is very important in mainstreaming renewable energies. The third area is situation similar overseas. There is a grid constraint in Japan as well. There is a lack of connectivity, and this is the issue. Power generation cost is declining now. Going forward, power transmission measures will have to be promoted with policy support. That is the changing environment we're in now. In terms of power generation, I would like to emphasize 2 points. There are 2 major policies on the left-hand side to make sure that we are focused on a power source that is competitive. And for example, mega solar cost is declining, and compared to other power source, it is becoming more competitive in Europe. Even in the absence of support, it is competitive or even better than thermal power generation. Therefore, from the current FIT system, the FIT premium system will have to be introduced, taking into consideration market mechanism. And there could also be ideas of combining this with storage as well. In the case of California, panels can follow the movement of the sun, and tracker can be introduced as well. So at the high demand time, more renewable energy generation must be provided. That is the area where the government will provide support. Next is the regional utilization, produce power where it is consumed. On-site power generation to be used on-site So you don't need a network so much in such a situation. So there should be major focus here, and it is mostly small-scale FIT. And maintaining the current FIT structure, we hope to promote such initiatives. So these are the two categories where we are providing support to the power generators in terms of government policy. Next, let me talk about the network. The power generating business are pointing out three issues: the lack of connectivity, too expensive, and too slow. These are the three complaints of the power generators. In terms of lack of connectivity, connect and manage efforts are underway. I will give you further details later on. But the fact that it is too expensive, prior to 2015, the power generators of renewable energies connectivity charge was borne solely by them, but now it is shared. And in terms of transmission lines, in principle, the power transmission company is bearing the cost. So the system is changing now. In the case of Europe, deep to shallow is the transition being made. Now, if the cost benefit is too low in terms of transmission lines, it could be diverted to different areas. In the case of Europe, except for Germany, that kind of mechanisms have been introduced. Regarding slowness, we have to solicit the support of the community's citizens, inclusive of overseas. How public acceptance can be gained in promoting construction work will be a major focus. In terms of connect and manage, for the transmission line, it will take time to improve. Therefore, the existing transmission line must be fully utilized. There are three concepts that we are pursuing today. First is the calculation of available capacity. For all power sources, full utilization was the basis of calculation. But as you can see on the right-hand side, we will have a calculation which is closer to the actual situation. So 6 million will be made available new kilowatt. In terms of emergency, based on the fact that it will be provided in the emergencies, about 40 million kilowatt or 40 gigawatt capacity can be added by utilizing the emergency capacity. And the third is the non-farm type of connectivity is being considered as well. Although details have not been made available yet in the Tohoku area, in the absence of nuclear power plant power generation, the capacity has been limited and there is a lack of connectivity to renewable energies. This is something that is being discussed in the Deliberation Council. When it is not operating, then what is added anew can be utilized freely. Therefore, depending on the operation of the other power sources, in the North Tohoku region, even before the construction is made, connectivity can be enabled. We are making improvements to this effect. Now, in terms of the next generation network to support massive introduction of renewable energy, even with the connect and manage, there is a limit. Therefore, that means that new transmission lines will have to be constructed. So far, we have followed the left-hand side. When there is a request for reinforcement, then there would be every time there is a request, it will be dealt with accordingly. But that means that the cost will be high. Therefore, going forward, we will look at the renewable energy potential in the region. Based on that, the master plan will be formulated and reinforcement of the transmission line will be conducted in a planned manner. In order to solicit the support of the community, we have to calculate the potential. That means that if we cannot say that it is infinite, because that will be too expensive, and we will be criticized for creating something that is wasteful. Renewable energy introduction is very important, but we have to have higher accuracy. It's two sides of the same coin. Therefore, the drivers of renewable energies, with them, we have to come up with the highly accurate outlook or forecast. That is going to be very important. Therefore, we have to work in collaboration between the operator and the government. As you can see on the right-hand side, in terms of where the renewable energy is highly potential, such as Hokkaido, Tohoku, and Kyushu, which is different from the three major cities. There is high potential in these areas. The current rule in terms of sharing cost is by regions. But if there is going to be a high introduction of wind power in Tohoku, that means that electricity charge will be high for Tohoku, but the electricity is provided to the Tokyo area as well. So we have changed the rules. When it transcends regions, we will have a mechanism to support this on a nationwide basis, inclusive of the legal changes. We are working out details currently. Now, in terms of transmission lines in Japan, used to be divided in regions and managed and constructed by the electric power companies of the regions. Therefore, we have loops within the regions. It's a circular route, but the connectivity between regions is very narrow. It's like, and when there is a disaster, the impact of a blackout will not be transmitting, but it is difficult to transcend regions to provide renewable energies. That is a disadvantage. Therefore, currently on the part of the government, as well as the related organizations and companies, are trying to have the core transmission lines reinforced, connecting regions. For the cost, we will have a nationwide system to share such costs. Against this backdrop, so far the flow of electricity was such that major electric power companies will generate power to provide to the consumers, but that is no longer the case. There will be distributed power sources on the part of users will be effectively utilized. Power generation, the power generation of the electric power companies can be used as a backup, but it will be more. It will flow both ways and covering wide areas in terms of power distribution for renewable energies, as well as for storage, as well as EV batteries. If we have 10,000, it will be the same as would become very significant enough for users. Therefore, this kind of approach will be required. Aggregator must be positioned in the system, and when calculation is made, the 100,000 yen meter is not appropriate. Therefore, a regulatory easing will be required. In terms of distribution network for Hokkaido, blackout occurred 2 years ago. And Hokkaido overall was subject to blackouts. But in terms of dealing with the BCP, for the government offices, as well as for hospitals, as well as evacuation shelters, we should be able to isolate to make it autonomous. And renewable energies, as well as storage, could be utilized power storage could be utilized for dealing with such emergencies and disasters. And then, for this network, electric power companies' facility could be provided on a rental basis to make it independent business. This is something that will require enactment of a law. We are trying to make improvements currently. So I have talked about the aggregator, and also there has to be more rationalization in terms of the method of measurement as well. Now I'd like to talk about the non-fossil certificate. So far, the power charge was based on the electric energy or kilowatt hours, but we have to also think about, we have to consider electric capacity as well as adjustment capacity as well as other factors. And that is the base of what we are trying to enact now. It is likely that within this year, the market will be established. In terms of the non-fossil value market, this is by 2030. In order to achieve 44%, it is absolutely necessary. Now, if the operators, if the business want to use renewable energies, this process will enable such a process. So these are some of the classifications. And so renewable energies can be utilized from these different categories. This is the result of auctions having entered 2019. Compared to the past, there have been a significant increase in trading for non-fossil certificates. For renewable energies, where it was used, where it was generated is unclear. In some cases, if you want to use for RE100, it is necessary to have a tracking system. Therefore, we have introduced this tracking system, and it is supporting the requirements of RE100. Therefore, for business, the procurement of RE will be facilitated. Now, so far, the people who wanted to use renewable energies would make their choices. But the retail business going forward by 2030, 44% target for renewable energy, or rather for non-fossil introduction will be the target, but there will be interim target set as well, so that the interim target can be met. Now, I said that the non-fossil certificate trading has increased, and there's going to be an interim target from 2025. That means that there will be a significant increase thereafter, according to our view. That was about 23% in terms of non-fossil certificate, and so for the hydro, 7%, and please refer to this table. Now, 9% trading using a certificate to be achieved is what we are calling for under this system. That is the initiative for 2020. With that, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hikino.